The millionaire falls into despair upon hearing the surname of the little beggar. It was the same as that of his late wife. Interested you? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone streets of Lumiere, a city where time seemed to stand still. Cassiel d'Alembert, a figure as enigmatic as the city itself, emerged from his mansion, his polished shoes clicking against the ancient stones. At 55, he cut an imposing figure, tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed back. Yet it was his eyes that truly captured attention. Deep-set and grey, they held a weariness that spoke of a man who had seen too much and said too little. As he began his daily walk through the historic centre, the city came alive around him. Shopkeepers raised their shutters, the aroma of freshly baked bread wafted from bakeries, and the distant chime of church bells marked the hour. Cassiel moved through this tableau with practiced indifference, his gaze fixed ahead, barely acknowledging the nods of recognition from those he passed. His destination, as it had been for the past 15 years, was the Aurora Clara Café. The bell above the door tinkled softly as he entered, and Maria, the owner, greeted him with a warm smile. "Good morning, Mr. d'Alembert. The usual?" Cassiel nodded, his expression unchanging. "Please, Maria." He took his seat by the window, the same table he had occupied every morning since that fateful day 15 years ago. As Maria brought over his double espresso, Cassiel's gaze drifted to the street outside. The world beyond the glass was a kaleidoscope of life, children laughing on their way to school, elderly couples strolling arm in arm, tourists marveling at the colonial architecture. Yet for Cassiel, it all seemed to exist in a separate reality, one he observed but never truly joined. The coffee was bitter and strong, just as he liked it. As he sipped, his mind wandered, as it often did, to Evadne. Her absence was a constant ache, a void that no amount of routine or distraction could fill. He could still see her smile, hear her laugh echoing through the halls of their mansion. The memory was both a comfort and a torment. "Anything else today, Mr. d'Alembert?" Maria's voice broke through his reverie. Cassiel shook his head. "No, thank you, Maria. This is perfect." As he finished his coffee, Cassiel's attention was drawn to a commotion outside. A group of children had gathered in the square, their excited voices carrying through the cafe's open windows. Among them, a small figure caught his eye. A girl no more than 10 years old, with tangled dark hair and clothes that had seen better days. She stood apart from the others, her eyes darting around as if searching for something or someone. For a moment their gazes met. The girl's eyes were a startling blue, a shade so familiar it sent a jolt through Cassiel's usually impassive demeanor. He found himself leaning forward, an inexplicable urge to know more about this child rising within him. But as quickly as the moment had come, it passed. The girl turned away, disappearing into the throng of children. Cassiel sat back, his heart racing. What was it about that child that had affected him so? He shook his head, trying to dismiss the encounter as nothing more than a strange coincidence. Yet, as he rose to leave, he found his eyes scanning the square, searching for a glimpse of those haunting blue eyes. The walk back to his mansion was a blur. Cassiel moved on autopilot, his mind replaying the brief encounter over and over. As he approached the wrought iron gates of his estate, a flash of color caught his eye. There, nestled among the carefully manicured flower beds, was a single blue dahlia, a flower he hadn't seen in 15 years. Cassiel froze, his hand hovering over the gate latch. The last person to grow blue dahlias in this garden had been Evadne. It had been her passion, her pride. After her passing, he had ordered the gardeners to maintain the flower beds exactly as she had left them, but the blue dahlias had never reappeared, until now. With trembling fingers, Cassiel reached out to touch the delicate petals. They were real, vibrant, and impossibly present. A chill ran down his spine as he remembered Evadne's words from long ago. "Blue dahlias are nature's way of telling us that miracles exist, my love. They appear when we need them most." As he entered the mansion, the silence that usually brought him comfort now felt oppressive. The portraits on the walls, all chosen by Evadne, seemed to watch him with newfound intensity. In the study, he poured himself a glass of brandy, his usual evening ritual coming hours too early. Cassiel sank into his leather armchair, the events of the morning swirling in his mind. The girl in the square, the blue dahlia in the garden, could they be more than mere coincidences? For the first time in years he felt a spark of something he had long thought extinguished: curiosity. As the afternoon light faded, casting long shadows across the room, Cassiel made a decision. Tomorrow he would break his routine. He would find that girl, learn her story, and perhaps, in doing so, he might finally begin to unravel the mysteries that had haunted him since Evadne's passing. Little did he know, this simple decision would set in motion a chain of events that would shatter the carefully constructed walls of his solitude and force him to confront the secrets of his past. Secrets that were far more tangled and dangerous than he could have ever imagined. As night fell over Lumière, Cassiel d'Alembert stood by his bedroom window, looking out over the city he had called home for so long. For the first time in 15 years, he felt the stirring of change in the air. Whether it would bring redemption or ruin, only time would tell. The next morning dawned with an unusual energy in the air. Cassiel woke earlier than usual, his sleep having been fitful and filled with dreams he couldn't quite remember. As he dressed, his eyes kept darting to the framed photograph on his nightstand, a picture of Evadne, her smile radiant, her blue eyes twinkling with a secret joy. Today, more than ever, he felt her absence keenly. Determined to break his long-standing routine, Cassiel left the mansion before the sun had fully risen. The streets of Lumière were quiet, the cobblestones still damp from the night's mist. He found himself walking toward the city square, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious girl from yesterday. As he approached the square, the sound of hushed voices caught his attention. In a secluded corner, partially hidden by the shadow of an old oak tree, stood an elderly woman engaged in what appeared to be an intense conversation with a young boy. Cassiel wouldn't have paid them much mind, but a word caught his ear. Evadne. His heart skipped a beat. Cassiel slowed his pace, straining to hear more without drawing attention to himself. The woman's voice was low, urgent. Must be careful. The girl is the key, but there are those who would stop at nothing to keep the truth buried. The boy nodded solemnly before darting off, disappearing down one of the narrow alleyways that crisscrossed the old city. The elderly woman remained, her gaze following the boy until he was out of sight. As she turned, her eyes met Cassiel's, and a flicker of recognition passed over her weathered face. For a moment neither moved. Then, with a grace that belied her years, the woman approached Cassiel. "Mr. d'Alembert," she said, her voice carrying a hint of an accent he couldn't quite place. "I've been hoping our paths would cross." Cassiel's mind raced. Who was this woman? And how did she know Evadne? "I'm afraid you have me at a disadvantage, madam," he replied, his tone carefully neutral. The woman smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "My name is Estefania. I am a friend of Evadne's." The use of the present tense wasn't lost on Cassiel. He felt a mix of emotions rising within him: curiosity, suspicion, and a faint glimmer of hope he dared not acknowledge. "I see," he said, struggling to maintain his composure. "And what, may I ask, brings you to Lumière after all these years?" Estefania glanced around as if checking for eavesdroppers. "Not here," she said softly. "There are ears everywhere, and what I have to tell you is not for them. Walk with me, Cassiel, for Evadne's sake." The mention of his late wife's name again sent a jolt through him. Against his better judgment, Cassiel found himself falling into step beside the elderly woman as she led him away from the square. They walked in silence for several minutes, winding their way through the narrow streets until they reached a small, secluded garden tucked away behind an old church. Estefania settled onto a bench, patting the space beside her in invitation. 15 years is a long time to keep secrets," she began, her eyes fixed on a point in the distance. "But some secrets are too dangerous to be spoken, even after so much time has passed." Cassiel's patience was wearing thin. "What secrets? What does any of this have to do with Evadne?" Estefania turned to face him, her expression grave. "Everything, Cassiel. It has everything to do with Evadne, and with you, and with a child who should never have been forgotten." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Cassiel gripped the edge of the bench, his knuckles turning white. "A child?" he whispered, his mind reeling. "What child?" "Evadne's child," Estefania replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your child, Cassiel. For a moment, all Cassiel could hear was the pounding of his own heart. "That's impossible," he said, shaking his head. "Evadne and we never had children. We tried, but—" "Not during your marriage, no," Estefania interrupted gently. Before you even met." The implications of her words hit Cassiel like a physical blow. He stood abruptly, pacing the small garden as he struggled to process what he was hearing. "Why?" he finally managed. "Why would she keep this from me? From everyone?" Estefania's eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and understanding. "To protect the child, Cassiel. To protect you both. There was a man, a dangerous man who believed the child was his. Evadne knew he would stop at nothing to claim what he saw as his own." Cassiel's mind was spinning. A child. Evadne's child. Possibly his child. And a threat he had known nothing about. "Where?" he demanded. "Where is this child now?" The old woman shook her head. "I don't know. Evadne arranged for the baby to be adopted to keep her safe, but she never lost track of her. Even after she was gone, she had measures in place to ensure the child's safety." A memory flashed through Cassiel's mind, the girl in the square, with eyes so achingly familiar. Could it be? "This man," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Is he still a threat?" Estefania's silence was answer enough. She reached into her bag, pulling out a small, leather-bound book. "Evadne's diary," she explained, holding it out to him. "Not all of it. She destroyed most of her records to protect the child. But what's here? It might help you understand, and it might help you find her." With trembling hands, Cassiel took the book. It felt impossibly heavy for its size, weighted with the secrets it contained. "Why now?" he asked, looking at Estefania with a mixture of gratitude and suspicion. "Why tell me all this after so many years?" The old woman stood, her face etched with lines of worry. "Because the past never truly stays buried, Cassiel. And because I fear the danger Evadne tried so hard to protect you both from, it may be closer than we think." As if to punctuate her words, a distant clock tower began to chime. Estefania glanced towards the sound, a flicker of fear crossing her face. "I've said too much already. Read the diary, Cassiel. Find the child. And whatever you do, trust no one." Before Cassiel could respond, Estefania had slipped away, disappearing into the maze of Lumia's streets as quickly and mysteriously as she had appeared. He was left alone in the garden, clutching Evadne's diary, his world irrevocably changed. As he made his way back to the mansion, Cassiel's mind raced with questions. Who was the dangerous man Estefania had spoken of? How much of his life with Evadne had been built on secrets and half-truths? And most pressingly, where was the child, now a young woman, who might be his daughter? The blue dahlia in his garden seemed to take on new significance as he passed it, a sign, perhaps, that the time for truth had finally come. As Cassiel entered his study, locking the door behind him, he knew that the life he had carefully constructed over the past 15 years was about to unravel. With a deep breath, he opened Evadne's diary. On the first page, in her elegant handwriting, was a single line that made his heart stop. "To my dearest Cassiel, if you're reading this, I'm so sorry. The truth is far more complicated than you could ever imagine." As Cassiel began to read, he realized that the mystery surrounding Evadne's past and his own future was only beginning to unfold. The study, once a sanctuary of order and calm, now felt like a prison to Cassiel. Hours had passed since he'd begun reading Evadne's diary, and with each page turned, his world tilted further on its axis. The elegant script that had once brought him comfort now seemed to mock him with its secrets. Evadne's words painted a picture of a life he'd never known, a young woman, barely out of her teens, caught in a web of deceit and danger. She wrote of a man named Victor Salvatore, a figure who loomed large in her past. His name appeared again and again, each mention dripping with a mixture of fear and regret. "Victor's obsession grows daily," one entry read. "He speaks of our child as if it's already his, a possession to be claimed. I fear what he might do if he knew the truth, that the baby isn't his at all." Cassiel's hands shook as he read those words. The implication was clear, yet the diary offered no further explanation. Who then was the father? Could it truly be him, as Estefania had suggested? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the room, Cassiel came across an entry that made his blood run cold. I've made the hardest decision of my life today. My beautiful daughter, my little Aurelia, will be safer far away from me. The adoption papers are signed. My heart breaks, but I know it's the only way to protect her from Victor's reach. One day I hope she'll understand. One day I hope I'll have the courage to tell Cassiel the truth. Aurelia. The name echoed in Cassiel's mind, bringing with it a flood of emotions he couldn't begin to process. A daughter. He had a daughter he'd never known, a child Evadne had been forced to give up to keep her safe. The final pages of the diary were filled with coded messages and cryptic notes. Evadne wrote of a fail-safe plan and a guardian who would watch over Aurelia if anything were to happen. The last entry, dated just days before Evadne's passing, was particularly haunting. If you're reading this, my love, it means I'm no longer there to protect our daughter. Find her, Cassiel. Keep her safe. The blue dahlia will bloom when the time is right. Trust in its message. Cassiel closed the diary, his mind reeling from the revelations. The blue dahlia in the garden? It wasn't just a coincidence. It was a sign, a message from Evadne reaching out from beyond. With renewed purpose, he stood and walked to the window. The city of Lumiere spread out before him, its lights twinkling in the gathering dusk. Somewhere out there was Aurelia, his daughter, possibly in danger and unaware of her true identity. A soft knock at the study door startled him from his reverie. "Mr. D'Alembert," it was Helena, his housekeeper. "There's someone here to see you. A young girl. She says it's urgent." Cassiel's heart raced. Could it be? He composed himself and opened the door. "Show her in, Helena." Moments later, a small figure entered the study. It was the girl from the square, her blue eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. Up close, the resemblance to Evadne was unmistakable. "Mr. D'Alembert," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Aurelia, and I think you might be my father." The world seemed to hold its breath as Cassiel looked at the child before him, the daughter he never knew he had. In that moment, he made a silent vow. He would protect her no matter the cost. Little did he know, the dangers lurking in the shadows were already closing in, ready to test that vow to its very limits. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 9 times, its deep resonance filling the tense silence of Cassiel's study. Aurelia sat perched on the edge of an oversized leather armchair, her small frame almost swallowed by its bulk. Her eyes, so startlingly like Evadne's, darted around the room, taking in the floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, the antique globe, and the portraits of stern-faced ancestors. Cassiel stood by the fireplace, struggling to find words. How does one begin a conversation with a daughter they've only just discovered? He cleared his throat. "Aurelia," he began, the name feeling foreign yet right on his tongue. How did you find me?" The girl's gaze settled on him, a mix of wariness and hope in her eyes. "I've always known about you, in a way," she said softly. "The woman who raised me, Sister Magdalena, she told me stories about my mother. And about you." Cassiel's brow furrowed. "Sister Magdalena? You were raised in an orphanage?" Aurelia nodded. "St. Catherine's Home for Girls. It's just outside the city. Sister Magdalena, she wasn't like the other nuns. She paid special attention to me, always making sure I was safe." A shadow crossed her face. "But last week she disappeared. That's when I knew I had to find you." Cassiel's mind raced. Could this Sister Magdalena be the guardian Evadne had mentioned in her diary? "Aurelia," he said gently, kneeling down to be at eye level with her. "Can you tell me what happened? Why did you have to leave the orphanage?" The girl's lower lip trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. "The night Sister Magdalena disappeared, I overheard 2 men talking. They mentioned my name and yours. They said it was time to collect the asset." She looked up at Cassiel, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I was scared. I remembered the stories about you, about this house, so I ran." A chill ran down Cassiel's spine. The danger Evadne had feared all those years ago was still very real. He reached out, hesitating for a moment before gently taking Aurelia's hand. "You're safe now," he said, surprised by the fierceness in his own voice. "I won't let anyone hurt you." For the first time since she'd arrived, Aurelia's face softened into a small smile. Do you believe me?" "That I'm your daughter?" Cassiel nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "I do. Your mother. She left me a diary. She told me about you, in her own way." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Aurelia, There's so much I don't understand yet, so much I need to figure out. But I promise you we'll face whatever comes next together." As if on cue, a loud crash echoed from somewhere in the mansion. Cassiel was on his feet in an instant, positioning himself between Aurelia and the door. "Stay here," he whispered urgently. "Lock the door behind me and don't open it for anyone but me." He slipped out of the study, his heart pounding. The sound had come from the direction of the library. As he crept down the hallway, he could hear muffled voices and the sound of drawers being opened and closed. Peering around the corner, Cassiel saw two men in dark clothing rifling through his desk. One of them held up a photo frame, a picture of Evadne. "This has to be it," the man hissed. The old lady said the key would be with her picture. Cassiel's fists clenched. These must be the same men Aurelia had overheard at the orphanage. But what key were they looking for? And what did the old lady have to do with any of this? Before he could decide on a course of action, a small hand slipped into his. Aurelia stood beside him, her eyes wide but determined. "I couldn't stay in there alone," she whispered. Cassiel wanted to scold her for not listening, but there was no time. The intruders were getting closer to the door. He made a split-second decision. "Run," he whispered to Aurelia. "To the garden. The Blue Dahlia, remember that." As Aurelia slipped away, Cassiel stepped into view of the intruders. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice cold and steady, "I believe you're trespassing." The men whirled around, surprise quickly giving way to menace on their faces. The larger of the two stepped forward, a twisted smile playing on his lips. "Mr. D'Alembert, I presume. We have some questions about your late wife, and about a certain little girl." Cassiel's mind raced. He needed to buy time, to keep these men away from Aurelia. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about," he said, edging towards the antique sword mounted on the wall. "But I'd be happy to discuss this matter with the authorities." The man's smile widened. "Oh, I don't think that will be necessary. You see, we have friends in high places. No one will miss you if you disappear." As the men advanced, Cassiel's hand closed around the hilt of the sword. He may have lived a life of quiet routine for the past 15 years, but the instincts from his younger days, days he'd tried hard to forget, came rushing back. "I wouldn't be so sure about that," Cassiel growled, bringing the sword up in a defensive stance. "I've been missing for 15 years. It's time I was found." The library erupted into chaos as Cassiel faced off against the intruders. Outside in the garden, a small figure crouched by a blue dahlia, waiting and watching. The quiet life Cassiel had built for himself was shattering. But from its ruins a new purpose was emerging, one that would require all the strength, cunning, and love he possessed. As the sounds of struggle echoed through the mansion, Aurelia clutched the blue dahlia close to her heart, whispering a prayer she'd learned long ago. "Protect us, Mother. Guide us home." Little did she know, the journey home would be far more perilous and far more extraordinary than she could have ever imagined. The clash of metal against metal rang through the library as Cassiel parried a blow from one of the intruders. Years of a sedentary lifestyle had taken their toll, but muscle memory from a long-buried past kicked in. He moved with a grace that belied his age, the antique sword an extension of his arm. "Who sent you?" Cassiel demanded, his voice steady despite the exertion. The larger of the two men, a brute with a scar running down his left cheek, lunged forward. "You know who," the man snarled. "The boss has been waiting a long time for this moment, D'Alembert. Hand over the girl, and maybe we'll let you live." Cassiel's mind raced. The boss, could it be Victor Salvatore, the man Evadne had feared so much? He didn't have time to ponder as the second intruder, a wiry man with cold, calculating eyes, circled around, trying to flank him. With a swift move, Cassiel knocked a heavy tome from the shelf, sending it crashing into the wiry man's face. The momentary distraction was all he needed. He kicked out, catching the larger man off guard and sending him stumbling into his companion. "I don't know who your boss is," Cassiel lied, his voice filled with a conviction he didn't quite feel. "But you've made a grave mistake coming here." The scarred man wiped blood from his lip, his eyes narrowing. "Have we? We know about the girl, D'Alembert. We know she's here. It's only a matter of time before we find her." A chill ran down Cassiel's spine. How did they know about Aurelia? His grip on the sword tightened as he positioned himself between the intruders and the door. "You won't touch her," he growled. The wiry man, recovering from the blow, pulled out a switchblade. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, old man. The boss wants what's rightfully his." Rightfully his? Cassiel couldn't keep the disgust from his voice. She's a child, not a possession. The men exchanged a look that made Cassiel's blood run cold. There was something they knew, something beyond just Aurelia's existence. Before either side could make another move, the sound of shattering glass echoed from somewhere in the mansion. All three men froze, their heads turning towards the noise. Aurelia, Cassiel thought, his heart racing. Had she broken in somewhere? Or was there someone else in the house? Taking advantage of the momentary distraction, Cassiel lunged forward, the tip of his sword catching the wiry man's arm. The intruder cried out, dropping his knife. "Go!" the scarred man shouted to his companion. "Find the girl!" "I'll deal with him." As the wiry man darted out of the library, Cassiel found himself locked in combat with the larger intruder. The man was strong, but Cassiel had desperation and love for a daughter he'd just met on his side. Their struggle took them across the library, knocking over chairs and sending books flying. Cassiel could feel his strength waning, but he couldn't give up. Not now. Not when Aurelia needed him. A memory flashed through his mind. Evadne standing in this very library, her hand resting on a particular book. "Sometimes, my love," she had said, "the best defense is hidden in plain sight." With a sudden burst of energy, Cassiel pushed the intruder back and lunged for the bookshelf. His fingers found the spine of the book Evadne had touched all those years ago, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. As he pulled it, a soft click echoed through the room. A section of the bookshelf swung open, revealing a hidden passage. The scarred man's eyes widened in surprise. "What the—" Cassiel didn't give him time to finish. With a well-aimed kick, he sent the intruder crashing into a heavy oak desk. The man's head hit the edge with a sickening thud, and he crumpled to the floor unconscious. Panting heavily, Cassiel stared at the secret passage. How long had this been here? What other secrets had Evadne kept from him? There was no time to ponder. Aurelia was still in danger. Grabbing a flashlight from the desk drawer, Cassiel plunged into the dark passage, praying he wasn't too late. As the bookshelf swung shut behind him, Cassiel found himself in a narrow, dusty corridor. The beam of his flashlight revealed cobwebs and footprints in the dust, recent ones. Someone had been here, and recently. His heart pounding, Cassiel moved forward. The passage seemed to slope downward, leading him deeper into the bowels of the mansion. He could hear faint sounds echoing from ahead, voices, and what sounded like crying. "Aurelia," he whispered, picking up his pace. The corridor twisted and turned, and Cassiel realized with a start that he was no longer just under his mansion. This passage seemed to extend beyond his property lines, possibly under the streets of Lumiar itself. After what felt like an eternity, the passage widened into a small chamber. Cassiel's flashlight beam swept across the room, revealing shelves lined with dusty files and old photographs. In the center stood a small safe, its door ajar. And there, huddled in the corner, her eyes wide with fear, was Aurelia. Next to her, unconscious on the ground, lay the wiry intruder. "Aurelia!" Cassiel rushed forward, dropping to his knees beside her. "Are you all right? Did he hurt you?" The girl shook her head, her voice trembling. No, I remembered something Sister Magdalena told me once, about a special move to protect myself. When he grabbed me, I just reacted." Cassiel looked at the unconscious man, a mix of pride and concern washing over him. "You did well," he said softly, pulling Aurelia into a gentle embrace. "You're safe now." As Aurelia clung to him, Cassiel's gaze fell on the open safe. Inside, he could see a stack of documents and a small ornate box. Whatever secrets Evadne had been keeping, the answers seemed to be right there. But before he could investigate further, a noise from the passage made him stiffen. Footsteps, growing louder by the second. Cassiel stood, positioning himself in front of Aurelia. "Stay behind me," he whispered, raising the sword once more. As a figure emerged from the shadows, Cassiel prepared himself for another fight. But the person who stepped into the light of his flashlight wasn't another intruder. It was Estefania, the old woman from the square. Her eyes, filled with a mixture of relief and apprehension, darted between Cassiel, Aurelia, and the unconscious man on the floor. "I see you've discovered Evadne's failsafe," she said, her voice echoing in the small chamber. "But I'm afraid our troubles are far from over, Cassiel. The past has finally caught up with us all." As Cassiel stared at Estefania, 1,000 questions racing through his mind, he realized that the mystery surrounding Evadne, Aurelia, and his own past was far more complex and far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. The echoes of the past were growing louder, and the time for answers had finally come. The air in the hidden chamber felt thick with tension and unspoken secrets. Cassiel stood protectively in front of Aurelia, his eyes fixed on Estefania. The old woman's sudden appearance had raised more questions than answers. "How did you find this place?" Cassiel demanded, his voice low and guarded. Estefania's gaze softened as it fell on Aurelia. "I've known about this hideaway for years, Cassiel. Evadne and we prepared it together long ago." Aurelia peeked out from behind Cassiel, her curiosity momentarily overcoming her fear. "You knew my mother?" A sad smile crossed Estefania's face. "I did, child. I was her confidant, her protector, and her greatest regret." Cassiel's grip on the sword tightened. "Explain." "Now." Estefania sighed, suddenly looking every one of her years. "We don't have much time. Those men upstairs, they're just the beginning. Victor Salvatore has finally found the trail, and he won't stop until he has what he believes is rightfully his." At the mention of Victor's name, Aurelia let out a small gasp. Cassiel turned to her, his eyes questioning. I've heard that name before," Aurelia whispered. "In my dreams. A man's voice, angry and scary, always saying that name." Cassiel felt a chill run down his spine. He turned back to Estefania. "Who is Victor Salvatore? What does he want with Aurelia?" The old woman moved to the open safe, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the ornate box inside. "Victor is a man of great power and even greater cruelty. Years ago, he and Evadne were briefly involved. When she tried to leave him, he became obsessed, convinced that any child of hers must be his." She opened the box, revealing a small USB drive and a locket. Evadne knew the truth would come out eventually. She left everything here. Evidence of Victor's crimes, proof of Aurelia's true parentage, and the key to accessing an account that could bring down Victor's entire empire. Cassiel's mind reeled. "And the true parentage?" Estefania's eyes met his. "She's yours, Cassiel, truly yours. Evadne discovered she was pregnant shortly after meeting you, but before you were married. She hid it from everyone, fearing Victor's reaction." A wave of emotions washed over Cassiel, relief, joy, and a deep, aching sadness for the years lost. He felt Aurelia's small hand slip into his, and he squeezed it gently. "But why didn't she tell me?" Cassiel asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. "We could have protected Aurelia together." Estefania shook her head. "Victor's reach is vast. She feared he would destroy you both. By keeping you in the dark, she hoped to keep you safe." A noise from the passage made them all freeze. Heavy footsteps echoed, growing louder by the second. "We need to leave," Estefania said urgently. "There's another exit, known only to Evadne and me. It leads to a safe house on the outskirts of the city." Cassiel hesitated, looking at the documents in the safe. "But the evidence is all copied on this," Estefania said, holding up the USB drive. "Evadne made sure of it. Now, we must go." As they hurried towards a hidden door at the back of the chamber, Aurelia suddenly stopped. "Wait!" she cried, running back to the safe. Before Cassiel could stop her, she had grabbed the locket. "My mother's voice and in my dreams. She always mentioned a locket," Aurelia explained, clutching it tightly. There was no time to argue. The footsteps were almost upon them. Cassiel scooped Aurelia into his arms, and they slipped through the hidden door just as voices erupted in the chamber behind them. The new passage was narrower and steeper than the last. They moved as quickly as they could in the dim light of Cassiel's flashlight, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter as they descended deeper into the earth. "Where does this lead?" Cassiel asked between breaths. "To the old catacombs beneath Lumia," Estefania replied. "From there we can access the tunnel system that leads out of the city." As they hurried through the winding passage, Cassiel's mind raced. His entire world had been turned upside down in the span of a day. He had a daughter, a brave, beautiful daughter, who was now in terrible danger. And Evadne. His beloved Evadne had carried so much pain and fear alone. After what felt like hours, but was likely only minutes, they emerged into a vast underground chamber. Ancient stone arches loomed above them, and the air was thick with the musty smell of centuries past. "We'll rest here for a moment," Estefania said, her breath coming in short gasps. "We should be safe for now." As they caught their breath, Aurelia opened her hand, revealing the locket. With trembling fingers, she tried to open it, but the clasp seemed stuck. "Here, let me," Cassiel said gently. Years of working with delicate antiques had given him a deft touch. With a soft click, the locket opened. Inside was a tiny photo of Evadne, smiling and radiant, and next to it a lock of hair, the same rich dark color as Aurelia's. Tears welled up in Aurelia's eyes. "It's her," she whispered. "It's really her." Cassiel felt his own eyes stinging as he looked at the photo of his late wife. So many secrets, so much lost time. But as he looked at Aurelia, he felt a fierce determination growing within him. He might not have been there for the beginning of her life, but he would do everything in his power to protect her now. Estefania's voice broke through his thoughts. "We should keep moving. The safe house isn't far now." As they prepared to continue their journey, a distant sound echoed through the catacombs, voices and the beam of flashlights. "They're persistent. I'll give them that," Cassiel muttered. He turned to Estefania. "You said you were Evadne's protector. I hope you're prepared to extend that protection to her daughter." The old woman's eyes flashed with a determination that belied her years. "With my life, if necessary. Now, follow me closely. The path ahead is treacherous, but it's our only way out." As they plunged deeper into the catacombs, Cassiel held Aurelia's hand tightly. The weight of the sword in his other hand was a constant reminder of the dangers they faced, but for the first time in 15 years, he felt truly alive. He had a purpose, a reason to fight. The secrets of the past were unraveling, bringing with them new dangers and unexpected allies. But as they navigated the dark tunnels beneath Lumia, Cassiel made a silent vow. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever truths were yet to be revealed, he would face them head-on. For Aurelia, for Evadne, for the family he never knew he had, and the future he was determined to protect. The echoes of their footsteps faded into the darkness, as the ancient catacombs of Lumiere became the unlikely stage for a story of love, loss, and redemption that had been decades in the making. The catacombs of Lumiere stretched before them like a labyrinth of shadows and secrets. Cassiel, Aurelia, and Estefania moved swiftly through the narrow passageways, their footsteps echoing off ancient stones. The air was thick with the musty scent of centuries past, and the only light came from Cassiel's flashlight, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "How much further?" Cassiel whispered, his hand firmly clasped around Aurelia's. Estefania, leading the way, glanced back. "Not far now. There's an old chapel ahead that connects to the tunnel system leading out of the city." As they rounded a corner, the beam of the flashlight illuminated a vast chamber. Crumbling stone arches soared overhead, and weathered statues of long-forgotten saints stood silent vigil along the walls. "We'll rest here for a moment," Estefania said, her breath coming in short gasps. "We should be safe for now." Aurelia sank to the ground, her small frame shaking with exhaustion. Cassiel knelt beside her, concern etched on his face. "Are you all right, little one?" She nodded, managing a weak smile. "I'm okay, just tired and scared." Cassiel felt a pang in his heart. In the span of a day, this child, his child, had her entire world turned upside down. He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I know it's scary, but I promise you, I won't let anything happen to you." As Aurelia leaned into his touch, Cassiel marveled at the instant connection he felt with her. It was as if a piece of his heart that he never knew was missing had suddenly clicked into place. Estefania watched their interaction with a mixture of sadness and fondness. "You have her eyes, you know," she said softly to Aurelia. "Your mother's eyes, so full of life and curiosity." Aurelia's hand went to the locket around her neck. "Can you tell me about her, my mother?" Estefania settled herself on a fallen piece of masonry, her eyes taking on a faraway look. Evadne was extraordinary. Brilliant, kind, and fiercely protective of those she loved. She had a way of seeing the best in people, even when they couldn't see it themselves. Cassiel listened intently, drinking in every word about the woman he thought he knew so well. "How did you two meet?" he asked. A shadow crossed Estefania's face. "It was complicated. I wasn't always the person you see before you. In my younger days, I worked for Victor Salvatore. Cassiel stiffened, his hand instinctively tightening around Aurelia's. You worked for him? The man who's hunting us now? Estefania nodded, her expression pained. I'm not proud of it. Victor's organization was involved in many unsavory things. I was young, desperate for money and a sense of belonging. But then I met Evadne. She paused, lost in the memory. She was like a ray of sunshine in that dark world. She saw through Victor's charm to the monster beneath, and she saw something in me that I had long forgotten. Hope. Aurelia leaned forward, captivated. What happened then? Evadne planned to leave Victor, but she discovered she was pregnant. With you, Estefania said, her eyes meeting Aurelia's. She knew Victor would never let her go if he thought the child was his, so she turned to me for help. Cassiel's mind was reeling. But why didn't she come to me? We were already together by then. Estefania sighed. She wanted to protect you, Cassiel. Victor's reach was vast, his vengeance terrible. Kvadan feared he would destroy you both if he knew the truth. A heavy silence fell over the group as the weight of Evadne's sacrifices sank in. Cassiel felt a mixture of love, grief, and frustration washing over him. So many years lost, so many secrets kept. Suddenly a distant sound echoed through the catacombs, voices and the beam of flashlights bouncing off the walls. They've found the entrance, Estefania said, her voice tight with urgency. We need to move now. As they scrambled to their feet, Aurelia's foot caught on a loose stone. She stumbled, her hand slipping from Cassiel's grasp. With a small cry, she fell, disappearing into a hidden crevice in the chamber floor. Aurelia! Cassiel's heart leapt into his throat as he lunged forward, his hands grasping at empty air. Estefania was at his side in an instant. There, she pointed, her flashlight beam illuminating a narrow opening. It's an old escape tunnel, probably used by monks centuries ago. Without hesitation, Cassiel squeezed through the opening, calling out softly, Aurelia! Can you hear me? A faint whimper echoed back. Papa, I'm here. I'm scared. The word Papa sent a jolt through Cassiel's heart. He pushed forward, ignoring the scrape of rough stone against his skin. I'm coming, sweetheart. Just stay where you are. The tunnel widened slightly, and Cassiel found himself in a small circular chamber. Aurelia was huddled in a corner, her eyes wide with fear. As soon as she saw him, she launched herself into his arms. I've got you, Cassiel murmured, holding her close. You're safe now. As he turned to head back, something caught his eye. On the far wall of the chamber, barely visible in the dim light, was a series of strange symbols etched into the stone. Estefania, he called out. I think you need to see this. The old woman squeezed through the opening, her breath catching as she saw the markings. Impossible, she whispered. What is it? Cassiel asked, feeling Aurelia's grip on him tighten. Estefania ran her fingers over the symbols, her expression a mixture of awe and fear. It's an old cipher. One Evadne and I used to communicate in secret, but this is recent. What does it say? Aurelia asked, her curiosity momentarily overcoming her fear. Estefania's eyes met Cassiel's, her voice barely above a whisper. It says, the truth lies beneath the blue dahlia. Trust only the keeper of the locket. A chill ran down Cassiel's spine. The blue dahlia in his garden, the locket around Aurelia's neck, it couldn't be coincidence. Before they could process this new information, the sound of voices grew louder, closer. We need to go, Estefania urged. This tunnel might be our only chance. As they hurried deeper into the unknown passage, Cassiel's mind raced. The mysteries surrounding Evadne seemed to multiply with each revelation. But one thing was clear. The answers they sought were more complex and potentially more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. With Aurelia's hand firmly in his, Cassiel pressed forward into the darkness. Whatever secrets lay ahead, whatever dangers they might face, he knew that protecting his newfound daughter was all that mattered now. The echoes of their footsteps faded into the shadows, as the ancient tunnels of Lumia became the unlikely stage for a story of love, loss, and redemption that had been decades in the making. The narrow tunnel stretched endlessly before them, a dark maw swallowing the feeble light of their flashlights. Cassiel led the way, one hand firmly grasping Aurelia's, the other tracing the damp stone walls. Estefania brought up the rear, her labored breathing echoing in the confined space. "Are you sure this leads out of the city?" Cassiel asked over his shoulder, his voice tight with concern. Estefania nodded, though the gesture was lost in the darkness. "Yes, but it's not a direct route. These tunnels were built centuries ago, designed to confuse and mislead pursuers." As if to emphasize her point, they soon found themselves at a junction, 3 identical passages branching off into the gloom. Aurelia squeezed Cassiel's hand. "Which way do we go?" Estefania stepped forward, her eyes scanning the walls. After a moment, she pointed to a barely visible mark etched into the stone. "This way. Evadne and we left signs just in case." As they ventured down the chosen path, Cassiel's mind whirled with questions. "Estefania," he began hesitantly. "You mentioned before that you worked for Victor. How did you end up helping Evadne?" The old woman was quiet for so long that Cassiel thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was heavy with memory. "I was young, foolish. Victor offered me a way out of poverty, a chance at what I thought was power. But the things I saw, the things I was asked to do," she trailed off, shuddering. "Evadne was different. She saw through Victor's facade from the start. When she discovered she was pregnant, she came to me for help." Aurelia, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "But why you? Weren't you on Victor's side?" Estefania's laugh was tinged with sadness. "Your mother had a gift for seeing the good in people, even when they couldn't see it themselves. She trusted me when I had given her no reason to. And in doing so, she saved me as much as I saved her." They continued in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. The tunnel began to slope upward, and the air grew fresher, hinting at an exit nearby. Suddenly Aurelia stumbled, her foot catching on something half buried in the ground. Cassiel steadied her, then bent to examine the object. It was a small, leather-bound book. "It's a journal," he said, brushing off the dirt. As he opened it, a folded piece of paper fluttered to the ground. Aurelia picked it up, her eyes widening as she unfolded it. "It's a letter," she gasped, "from my mother." Cassiel and Estefania crowded around as Aurelia began to read aloud. "My dearest Aurelia, if you're reading this, then things have not gone as I had hoped. I pray that you are safe, that you have found your way to Cassiel, and that Estefania has kept her promise to protect you both. There is so much I wish I could tell you, so many years of love and laughter we should have shared. But know this, everything I've done, every secret I've kept, has been to keep you safe. The man who hunts you, Victor Salvatore, is dangerous beyond measure. He believes you are his, but the truth is far different. Your father, your true father, is Cassiel d'Alembert, a man of honor, kindness, and love. I'm sorry I kept you from each other for so long. In this journal, you'll find the truth about your heritage, about the organization Victor leads, and about a legacy that is rightfully yours, but be warned. This knowledge comes with great danger. Trust in Cassiel and Estefania. And remember, my darling girl, that no matter what happens, no matter what you learn, you are loved. You have always been loved. Be brave, be kind, and know that I am always with you. All my love, Mama." As Aurelia finished reading, tears streamed down her face. Cassiel pulled her into a tight embrace, his own eyes glistening. Estefania stood apart, her expression a mix of guilt and resolve. "We should keep moving," she said softly after giving them a moment. "We're not safe yet." As they continued their journey, Cassiel clutched the journal tightly. Whatever secrets it held, whatever dangers it might bring, he knew it was the key to understanding the truth about Evadne, about Aurelia, and about the life he never knew he had. The tunnel began to widen, and ahead they could see a faint glimmer of light. Hope surged through them as they quickened their pace. But as they rounded the final bend, their hearts sank. The exit was blocked by a heavy iron gate, rusted but still formidable. Beyond it they could see trees and open sky, freedom tantalizing close yet unreachable. "No," Cassiel muttered, rattling the gate in frustration. "There has to be a way through." Estefania approached, her eyes scanning the gate and surrounding walls. "Wait," she said, pointing to a small keyhole almost hidden by rust and debris. "Evadne mentioned a key, something she always wore." Aurelia's hand flew to the locket around her neck. With trembling fingers, she removed it and held it out to Estefania. The old woman took it gently, examining it closely. After a moment, She pressed a hidden catch and the locket split apart, revealing not just the photo and lock of hair, but a small, intricate key. "Clever girl, Evadne," Estefania murmured, a sad smile playing on her lips. She inserted the key into the lock, and with a grinding screech, the gate swung open. The three of them stumbled out into the fresh air, blinking in the sudden brightness. They found themselves in a small, overgrown courtyard, hidden from view by crumbling walls and dense foliage. "Where are we?" Aurelia asked, looking around in wonder. Estefania's expression was grim. "The old monastery on the outskirts of Lumiere. It's been abandoned for years. We should be safe here, at least for a while." As they caught their breath, Cassiel turned to Estefania, his voice low and urgent. "What now? Where do we go from here?" The old woman's eyes were fixed on the journal in Cassiel's hands. "Now," she said, "we learn the truth, all of it, and then we decide how to use it." Aurelia, who had been exploring the courtyard, suddenly called out, "Look, another blue dahlia." Sure enough, nestled among the weeds and wildflowers, a single blue dahlia bloomed, vibrant, impossible, and full of promise. Cassiel and Estefania exchanged a look. The cipher in the catacombs had mentioned the blue dahlia. Was this another sign from Evadne? Another piece of the puzzle? As they gathered around the flower, a sense of anticipation filled the air. They had escaped immediate danger, but they all knew this was just the beginning. The journal held secrets that could change everything, and Victor Salvatore was still out there, searching. But for now, in this hidden courtyard with the sun on their faces and hope in their hearts, they allowed themselves a moment of peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, a family forged by secrets, united by love, and determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The blue dahlia swayed gently in the breeze, a silent guardian of mysteries yet to be revealed, and a promise of revelations to come. The abandoned monastery loomed before them, its weathered stone walls a testament to centuries of secrets and silence. Cassiel, Aurelia, and Estefania made their way through the overgrown courtyard, the blue dahlia a vibrant beacon amidst the neglect. "We should find shelter," Estefania said, her eyes scanning the crumbling buildings. "Somewhere defensible where we can rest and read." Her gaze fell meaningfully on the journal in Cassiel's hands. He nodded, feeling the weight of Evadne's secrets pressing against his chest. They found an old chapel, its roof mostly intact and its thick walls offering both protection and privacy. As Estefania secured the heavy wooden door, Cassiel helped Aurelia settle on a dusty pew. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, studying her face. Despite the fear and exhaustion evident in her eyes, there was a strength there that made his heart swell with pride. Aurelia nodded, managing a small smile. "I'm okay, just a lot has happened." Cassiel chuckled ruefully. "That's quite an understatement, little one." As Estefania joined them, Cassiel took a deep breath and opened the journal. Aurelia pressed close to his side, her eyes wide with anticipation. Even Estefania leaned in, her usual composure slipping to reveal a hint of eagerness. The first page bore Evadne's elegant handwriting. "To those I love most in this world, if you're reading this, then my worst fears have come to pass. I'm so sorry for the burden I've placed upon you, for the secrets I've kept, and the dangers I've inadvertently brought into your lives. But know this, everything I've done, every choice I've made has been out of love and a desperate desire to protect you both. Cassiel, my beloved husband, forgive me for not trusting you with the whole truth. And Aurelia, my precious daughter, forgive me for the years we've lost." What follows is the full account of my past, of the organization known as the Crimson Veil, and of the man who leads it, Victor Salvatore. Read carefully, for knowledge is both power and peril in this case. May these words guide you, protect you, and ultimately set you free. With all my love, Evadne. Cassiel's voice trembled as he read the last words aloud. He felt Aurelia's small hand slip into his, a gesture of comfort and connection that nearly undid him. Estefania's voice broke the silence. "The Crimson Veil. I haven't heard that name in years." "You know of it?" Cassiel asked, his eyes sharp. The old woman nodded, her face grave. "It's the organization Victor leads. On the surface, it appears to be a network of legitimate businesses and charities, but underneath, it's an empire built on corruption, extortion, and worse." Aurelia shivered, pressing closer to Cassiel. He wrapped an arm around her protectively as he turned the page. What followed was a detailed account of Evadne's early life, her recruitment into the Crimson Veil as a brilliant young cryptographer, her initial admiration for Victor Salvatore's charisma and vision, and her gradual realization of the true nature of the organization. Victor's obsession with legacy and bloodlines bordered on madness, Evadne wrote. He believed he was destined to create a dynasty that would shape the world. When I discovered I was pregnant, I knew I had to get out. The thought of my child being raised in that world of darkness and manipulation, I couldn't bear it. Cassiel's heart ached as he read of Evadne's desperate plan to escape, of her fear and loneliness. But then came an entry that made him pause, his breath catching. I never expected to find love in the midst of my escape. But then I met Cassiel. His kindness, his integrity. It was like stepping into sunlight after years in shadow. When I discovered the baby was his, not Victor's, I felt a joy I can't describe. But with that joy came terror. If Victor ever found out. Aurelia's voice was small but steady as she asked, "So, you really are my father?" Cassiel met her eyes, seeing in them a mirror of his own emotions, hope, fear, and a desperate longing for connection. "Yes," he said softly. "It seems I am." Estefania cleared her throat, her eyes suspiciously bright. "Perhaps we should take a break. This is a lot to process." But Cassiel shook his head, turning back to the journal. "No, we need to know everything. The more we understand, the better chance we have of staying ahead of Victor." The next pages detailed Evadne's careful maneuvering, using her skills to erase her tracks, creating new identities and always staying one step ahead of the Crimson Veil's reach. "I've hidden evidence of Victor's crimes," one entry read. "Bank records, communications, proof of his connections to corrupt officials. It's encrypted and scattered, but with the right key it could bring down his entire empire. The final piece, the key to it all, I've hidden in plain sight, where only those who truly know me would think to look." Cassiel's mind raced. The blue dahlia? The locket? What other clues had Evadne left behind? As they delved deeper into the journal, a picture emerged of an organization far more insidious and far-reaching than they had imagined. The Crimson Veil had tentacles in governments, financial institutions, even law enforcement agencies across the globe. Victor's ultimate goal, Evadne wrote, is nothing less than reshaping society according to his twisted vision. He sees himself as a grand architect, moving people like chess pieces. The thought of Aurelia in his hands, being molded into his heir, it haunts my nightmares. A chill ran down Cassiel's spine as he read those words. He looked at Aurelia, seeing not just Evadne's eyes, but a reflection of her strength and determination as well. "We won't let that happen," he said firmly. "I promise you, we'll find a way to stop him." As the light outside began to fade, casting long shadows through the chapel windows, they reached the final pages of the journal. Evadne's handwriting had become more hurried, more desperate. "I fear my time is running out. Victor's agents are closing in. I've done all I can to protect Aurelia, to leave a path for Cassiel to find her. My only regret is that I won't be there to see them together, to see the family we should have been. But I have one last card to play, one last secret that could change everything. If you're reading this, my loves, know that the answers you seek are closer than you think. Look to the flowers that bloom against all odds, and remember, sometimes the most precious treasures are hidden in plain sight." The last entry ended abruptly, as if Evadne had been interrupted mid-thought. Cassiel closed the journal gently, his mind whirling with all they had learned. Estefania broke the heavy silence. "So, the evidence Evadne gathered, if we could find it, decrypt it. We could bring down the Crimson Veil," Cassiel finished, "and keep Aurelia safe once and for all." Aurelia's voice was small but determined. "But how do we find it? And what did Mama mean about flowers blooming against all odds?" Before anyone could answer, a sound outside made them all freeze, footsteps growing closer. Cassiel moved swiftly, extinguishing their small lamp and pulling Aurelia close. Estefania pressed herself against the wall near the door, her entire body tense. As the footsteps reached the chapel entrance, Cassiel held his breath. Had Victor's men found them already? Or was this something else? Perhaps another piece of the puzzle Evadne had left behind. In the tense silence, with Aurelia's heart beating rapidly against his chest, Cassiel knew that whatever came through that door would change their lives forever. The truths they had uncovered were just the beginning. The real challenge and the real danger was only just beginning. The ancient hinges of the chapel door groaned in protest as it slowly swung open. Cassiel tightened his grip on Aurelia, his free hand reaching for the antique sword he had managed to keep through their harrowing escape. Estefania pressed herself further into the shadows, her eyes glinting with a mix of fear and determination. A figure stepped into the chapel, silhouetted against the fading light outside. Tall, lean, with an air of quiet authority. As the newcomer moved further into the room, Cassiel's breath caught in his throat. He knew that walk, that bearing. "Helena," he whispered, disbelief coloring his voice. The figure stopped, head tilting slightly. "Mr. d'Alembert? Is that you?" Aurelia looked up at Cassiel, confusion written across her face. "You know her?" Cassiel nodded, still stunned. She was our housekeeper. But how?" Helena stepped fully into the light, and Cassiel saw that her usual prim and proper appearance had been replaced by practical dark clothing. In her hand she held a small device that looked like a cross between a cell phone and a GPS unit. "I believe," Helena said, her voice calm but tinged with urgency, "that we have much to discuss, Mr. d'Alembert, or should I say, Cassiel." Estefania moved away from the wall, her eyes narrowed. "Who are you really? How did you find us?" Helena's gaze moved to the older woman, a flicker of recognition passing over her face. "Estefania, it's been a long time. I'm glad to see Evadne's faith in you was not misplaced." The tension in the room was palpable. Cassiel stood, gently pushing Aurelia behind him. "Helena, what's going on? How do you know about Evadne's plans?" A sad smile played on Helena's lips. "Because, Cassiel, I've been part of those plans from the beginning. Evadne didn't just hire me as a housekeeper. She placed me in your home to watch over you, to be ready when the time came." Cassiel's mind reeled. How much of his life had been orchestrated without his knowledge? He felt a surge of anger, quickly tempered by the realization of the lengths Evadne had gone to protect him and Aurelia. "The blue dahlia in the garden," he said slowly. "That was you?" Helena nodded. "A signal, to let you know it was time. I had hoped to explain everything to you back at the mansion, but Victor's men arrived sooner than we anticipated." Aurelia stepped out from behind Cassiel, her eyes wide with curiosity and a hint of hope. "You knew my mother?" Helena's expression softened as she looked at the young girl. "I did, dear one. And I've been watching over you from afar all these years, just as I promised her I would." Estefania moved closer, her initial suspicion giving way to cautious optimism. "If what you say is true, then you're the final piece of Evadne's failsafe plan." "Indeed," Helena confirmed. She held up the device in her hand. "This is keyed to the encrypted data Evadne hid. With this, and the information in her journal, we can finally bring down the Crimson Veil." A surge of hope ran through Cassiel, but it was quickly tempered by caution. "How can we be sure we can trust you?" Helena reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. She handed it to Cassiel. In it, a much younger Helena stood beside Evadne, both women smiling broadly. Between them was a tiny bundle, a newborn Aurelia. "Evadne was more than my employer," Helena said softly. "She was my friend, my sister in all but blood. I swore to her that I would protect her family, no matter the cost." Cassiel studied the photo, emotions warring within him. Part of him wanted to cling to his anger, to the feeling of betrayal at having been kept in the dark for so long. But as he looked at Aurelia, at the hope shining in her eyes, he knew that trust was their only path forward. "All right," he said finally. "What's our next move?" Helena's relief was palpable. "We need to get to the data cache." Evadne split it into 3 parts, hidden in locations meaningful to her. "The first is here in Lumiar. The blue dahlia," Aurelia piped up, "in the courtyard. Mama's letter mentioned flowers blooming against all odds." A proud smile spread across Cassiel's face. "Clever girl, just like your mother." As they prepared to leave the relative safety of the chapel, Estefania voiced the concern they were all feeling. "Victor's men can't be far behind. How do we stay ahead of them?" Helena's expression turned grim. "We have one advantage. An inside source in the Crimson Veil has been feeding us information. They've managed to misdirect Victor's forces, but it won't last long. Cassiel's eyebrows shot up. An inside source? Who? I don't know, Helena admitted. They communicate only through encrypted channels, but without their help we wouldn't have made it this far. As they stepped out into the courtyard, the blue dahlia seemed to glow in the twilight. Cassiel knelt beside it, gently brushing the petals. What now? He asked. Helena knelt beside him, her device beeping softly. The data is stored on a microchip, likely hidden in the soil. We need to dig, carefully. As Cassiel and Helena worked to unearth the hidden chip, Aurelia and Estefania kept watch. The night was eerily quiet, broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl or rustle of wind through the overgrown vegetation. Finally, with a soft exclamation of triumph, Helena held up a tiny dirt-covered object. Got it! But their victory was short-lived. In the distance, they heard the unmistakable sound of vehicles approaching. We need to move, Estefania urged. Now! As they hurried back towards the tunnel entrance, Cassiel scooped Aurelia into his arms. The girl clung to him tightly, her face buried in his shoulder. It's okay, he murmured. I've got you. We're going to be all right. But even as he spoke the words, Cassiel knew the challenges ahead were far from over. They had the first piece of the puzzle, yes, but two more remained, and Victor Salvatore, with all the resources of the Crimson Veil at his disposal, was closing in. As they disappeared into the darkness of the tunnel, the blue dahlia stood as a silent sentinel in the moonlight, a symbol of hope, of secrets revealed, and of a family fighting against all odds to stay together. The echoes of their footsteps faded, replaced by the distant sound of car doors slamming and voices shouting orders. The race was on, a desperate sprint towards truth and freedom, with the shadows of the past nipping at their heels. In the depths of the tunnel, Cassiel held Aurelia close, his mind racing with all they had learned and all that still lay ahead. One thing was certain, their journey was far from over, but with every step, every revelation, they moved closer to the truth Evadne had sacrificed everything to protect. As they hurried through the darkness, guided by Helena's device and Estefania's memory, Cassiel made a silent vow. Whatever came next, whatever dangers they faced, he would see this through. For Aurelia, for Evadne, for the family he had lost, and the one he was only just beginning to know. The damp, musty air of the tunnel pressed in around them as Cassiel, Aurelia, Estefania, and Helena hurried through the darkness. The only light came from Helena's device, casting eerie shadows on the ancient stone walls. How much further? Cassiel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Aurelia clung to his hand, her small fingers trembling slightly. Helena consulted her device. The tunnel network is extensive, but if my calculations are correct, we should reach an exit point in about 10 minutes. It'll bring us out near the old lighthouse on the coast. Estefania's brow furrowed. The lighthouse? But that's miles from Lumiar. How is that possible? These tunnels are older than the city itself, Helena explained. They were used by smugglers and resistance fighters for centuries. Evadne, she made sure to map them all. As they pressed on, Cassiel's mind raced. The revelation that Helena had been part of Evadne's plan all along was still sinking in. He felt a complex mix of emotions. Gratitude for her protection, frustration at being kept in the dark, and a deep, aching sadness for all the years lost. Helena, he said softly, how much did you know? About Aurelia? About me? The housekeeper, or whatever her true role was quiet for a moment before responding. I knew enough to keep you both safe. Evadne. She wanted to tell you everything, Cassiel, but the risk was too great. Victor's reach was vast, and she feared what he might do if he discovered the truth. Aurelia's voice piped up, small but curious. Did you know about me all this time? Helena's expression softened in the dim light. I did, dear one. I watched you grow from afar, always making sure you were safe. It broke my heart not to be able to tell you both the truth. A comfortable silence fell over the group as they continued their journey. Cassiel found himself studying Aurelia's profile in the faint light. He could see so much of Evadne in her, the determined set of her jaw, the curious glint in her eye. But there was something else there too, something uniquely Aurelia. Our strength and resilience that both awed and humbled him. Suddenly, Estefania held up a hand, signaling them to stop. Listen, she whispered. In the distance, they could hear faint echoes, voices, and the sound of footsteps. "They found the tunnel entrance," Helena said, her voice tight with urgency. "We need to move faster." They quickened their pace, the sounds of pursuit growing louder behind them. Cassiel scooped Aurelia into his arms, ignoring the protest of his tired muscles. "Hold on tight," he murmured to her. As they rounded a bend in the tunnel, a faint glimmer of light appeared ahead. "There," Helena pointed. "The exit!" But just as hope surged through them, a rumbling sound filled the air. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble. "Cave in!" Estefania shouted. "Run!" They sprinted towards the exit as chunks of rock and earth began to fall around them. Cassiel shielded Aurelia with his body, feeling debris pelting his back. With a final burst of speed, they burst out of the tunnel just as it collapsed behind them. They stumbled onto a rocky beach, the sound of waves crashing nearby. In the distance, the beam of the lighthouse swept across the dark water. As they caught their breath, the reality of their narrow escape sank in. The tunnel was sealed, cutting off their pursuers, but also their way back. "Is everyone all right?" Cassiel asked, setting Aurelia down gently and checking her for injuries. Nods and murmurs of assent came from the group. Helena was already consulting her device. "The collapse bought us some time, but Victor's men will find another way. We need to keep moving." Estefania pointed towards the lighthouse. Evadne mentioned the lighthouse in her journal. Could the second part of the data be hidden there? Helena nodded. "It's likely. The lighthouse has been abandoned for years, but it holds special significance for Evadne. It's where she first realized she was pregnant with Aurelia." As they made their way across the rocky shore towards the lighthouse, Cassiel felt a tug on his sleeve. He looked down to see Aurelia, her face a mix of exhaustion and determination. "Papa," she said softly, testing out the word. It sent a jolt through Cassiel's heart. "Are we going to be okay?" Cassiel knelt down to her level, placing his hands on her shoulders. "I promise you, Aurelia, I will do everything in my power to keep you safe. We're in this together now, and nothing, not Victor, not the Crimson Veil, nothing will change that." A small smile broke across Aurelia's face, and she threw her arms around Cassiel's neck. He held her close, marveling at how natural it felt, how right. As they approached the lighthouse, its weathered exterior looming against the night sky, Cassiel felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever secrets were yet to be uncovered, he knew that he had found something precious. A family, a daughter, a reason to fight. The lighthouse stood as a beacon of hope in the darkness, much like the blue dahlia had in the monastery courtyard. As they prepared to enter, searching for the next piece of Evadne's puzzle, Cassiel couldn't help but wonder what other surprises his late wife had left for them to discover. The sound of waves crashing against the shore provided a constant backdrop, a reminder of the relentless passage of time. But for Cassiel, holding Aurelia's hand as they stepped into the unknown, time seemed to stand still. The past and future collided in this moment, full of danger and promise. As Helena worked to unlock the lighthouse door, Cassiel caught Estefania's eye. The old woman gave him a nod of approval, a silent acknowledgement of the bond forming between father and daughter. With a soft click, the door swung open. They stepped inside, leaving the open beach behind and entering a new chapter of their journey. The answers they sought, and the dangers that came with them, lay somewhere in the winding stairs and shadowed rooms above. The lighthouse, once a guide for lost ships, now stood as a silent guardian of secrets. As they began their ascent, Cassiel couldn't shake the feeling that they were climbing towards not just answers, but a confrontation that had been years in the making. The race against Victor Salvatore and the Crimson Veil was far from over. But with each step, each revelation, they moved closer to the truth Evadne had sacrificed everything to protect. The interior of the lighthouse was a study in shadows and decay. Dust motes danced in the beam of Helena's flashlight as they made their way up the winding staircase. The metal steps creaked ominously under their weight, a chorus of age and neglect. "Watch your step," Cassiel cautioned, keeping a protective hand on Aurelia's shoulder. The girl nodded, her eyes wide as she took in their surroundings. As they climbed, Helena consulted her device. "The signal's getting stronger. Whatever Evadne hid here, we're getting close." They reached a landing, and Estefania paused, her breath coming in short gasps. "I remember this place," she said softly. "Evadne and we came here once, years ago." She said it was her thinking spot, where she came to make big decisions. Cassiel felt a pang in his heart. How much of Evadne's life had he missed? How many secrets had she carried alone? They continued upward, the stairs spiraling tighter as they neared the top. Finally, they emerged into the lamp room. The great lens stood silent and dark, its once brilliant light long extinguished. "Look," Aurelia said, pointing to a small table near the window. On it sat a chessboard, its pieces arranged mid-game. Helena approached it cautiously, her device beeping more insistently. "This is it. The data must be hidden here somewhere." As they gathered around the chessboard, Cassiel noticed something odd. "These aren't standard chess pieces," he murmured. Each piece was intricately carved, bearing symbols he didn't recognize. Estefania leaned in for a closer look, her eyes widening in recognition. "These symbols, they're from the old cipher Evadne and I used. Each piece must represent a letter or a word." "But how do we decode it?" Cassiel asked, frustration creeping into his voice. Time was running out, and Victor's men couldn't be far behind. Aurelia, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "Mama's letter, she said something about treasures hidden in plain sight, remember?" Cassiel nodded, encouraging her to continue. "Well," Aurelia said, her voice growing more confident, "in chess, the most valuable piece is hidden in plain sight too. The king doesn't look that special, but the whole game is about protecting it." A spark of understanding lit up Helena's face. "Of course. Evadne always said that in life, like in chess, the most important things aren't always the most obvious." With trembling fingers, Helena picked up the White King. As she turned it over, a small compartment in the base clicked open. Inside was a tiny memory chip, no larger than a fingernail. "This is it," Helena breathed, carefully removing the chip. The second part of the data. A wave of relief washed over the group, but it was short-lived. From outside, they heard the distant sound of vehicles approaching. "We need to go," Estefania urged. "Now." But as they turned to leave, Cassiel noticed something else on the table, a small leather-bound notebook. He snatched it up, tucking it into his pocket without a word. Something told him it might be important. They hurried back down the spiral staircase, the sound of car doors slamming echoing from outside. As they reached the ground floor, voices could be heard approaching the lighthouse. "The back," Helena whispered urgently. "There's an old service door." They slipped out just as flashlight beams cut through the front windows. The night air was cool on their faces as they ran, keeping low and using the rocky terrain for cover. "Where now?" Cassiel asked between breaths, one arm protectively around Aurelia. Helena pointed to a dense copse of trees in the distance. "There. We can lose them in the woods and make our way to the safe house." As they ran, Aurelia stumbled, crying out softly. Cassiel scooped her up without breaking stride, ignoring the burning in his muscles. "I've got you," he murmured. "Just hold on." They reached the tree line just as shouts erupted behind them. Flashlight beams swept the area they had just vacated. Under the cover of the dense foliage, they paused to catch their breath. Cassiel set Aurelia down gently, checking her for injuries. "Are you okay?" She nodded bravely, though he could see tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm sorry I slowed us down," she whispered. Cassiel felt his heart constrict. "Hey," he said softly, cupping her face in his hands. "You have nothing to be sorry for. You've been so brave, so smart. I'm proud of you, Aurelia. And I know your mother would be too." A small smile broke through Aurelia's tears, and she hugged him tightly. Over her shoulder, Cassiel caught Helena and Estefania exchanging a look, part relief, part sadness for the years lost. As the sounds of pursuit grew more distant, Helena consulted her device once more. "The safe house isn't far. We should be able to make it by dawn if we keep moving." They set off through the woods, the trees providing cover, but also presenting new challenges. Roots threatened to trip them, and low-hanging branches scratched at their faces and arms. As they walked, Cassiel's mind turned to the notebook he had grabbed from the lighthouse. When they had a moment of safety, he would need to examine it. Something told him it held answers to questions he hadn't even thought to ask yet. The sky was just beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn when Helena finally called a halt. They had reached a small clearing, in the center of which stood a modest cabin. "We're here," she said, relief evident in her voice. Evadne set this place up years ago as a final fallback. As they approached the cabin, Cassiel felt a mix of exhaustion and anticipation. They had the second piece of the data now, and a moment of relative safety. But he knew their respite would be brief. Victor Salvatore and the Crimson Veil were still out there, and the final piece of Evadne's puzzle remained to be found. Inside the cabin, as Helena set about securing their temporary haven and Estefania tended to Aurelia's scrapes and bruises, Cassiel found a quiet corner. He pulled out the notebook, its leather cover worn and cracked with age. As he opened it, a small photograph fluttered to the floor. Cassiel picked it up, his breath catching in his throat. It was a picture of Evadne, younger than he had ever known her, standing on the beach near the lighthouse. Her hand rested on her stomach, a secret smile playing on her lips. On the back, in Evadne's elegant handwriting, were the words, "To the family I dream of, the love I've found and the future I'll protect at any cost." Cassiel felt tears prick at his eyes. He looked up, watching Aurelia as she bravely endured Estefania's ministrations. In that moment, he made a silent vow to Evadne, wherever she might be. "I'll finish what you started," he whispered. "I'll keep her safe, I promise." As the first true light of dawn broke through the cabin windows, Cassiel knew that their journey was far from over. But for the first time since this wild chase began, he felt a glimmer of true hope. They had come this far, against all odds. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as a family. The notebook in his hands held secrets yet to be revealed. The final piece of the puzzle was still out there, and Victor Salvatore's shadow loomed large. But in this quiet moment, watching his daughter's brave smile, Cassiel felt ready for whatever came next. The new day was dawning, bringing with it the promise of answers, the threat of danger, and the unshakable bond of a family forged in the fires of adversity. The early morning light filtered through the dusty windows of the cabin, casting long shadows across the worn floorboards. Cassiel sat at a small table, Evadne's notebook open before him, his eyes scanning the pages with growing intensity. Aurelia slept nearby, curled up on a threadbare sofa, exhaustion having finally claimed her. Helena and Estefania huddled in the kitchen area, speaking in hushed tones as they prepared a meager breakfast from the cabin's sparse supplies. The aroma of brewing coffee filled the air, a comforting counterpoint to the tension that hung over them all. As Cassiel turned another page, his breath caught in his throat. There in Evadne's elegant handwriting was a passage that made his heart race. "The final piece lies where it all began, where two hearts first beat as one, and where the truth of our love was sealed." Victor will never think to look there, for he knows nothing of love's true power. Cassiel's mind whirled. Where it all began. He closed his eyes, memories flooding back. The day he met Evadne, the whirlwind romance that followed, the moment he knew she was the one. "The old clock tower," he whispered, the realization hitting him like a thunderbolt. "What was that?" Helena asked, approaching with a steaming mug of coffee. Cassiel looked up, his eyes bright with excitement and a touch of fear. "I know where the last piece is hidden. The old clock tower in the center of Lumia. It's where Evadne and I had our first date, where I proposed to her." Estefania joined them, her brow furrowed. "But that's in the heart of the city. It'll be crawling with Victor's men by now." "Exactly," Cassiel said, a grim smile playing on his lips. "It's the last place they'd expect us to go. Hidden in plain sight, just like Evadne always planned." A soft voice interrupted their discussion. "What's hidden in plain sight?" They turned to see Aurelia, awake and alert, her blue eyes, so like Evadne's, filled with curiosity. Cassiel moved to her side, kneeling down to meet her gaze. "The last piece of the puzzle your mother left for us. We think we know where it is, but getting to it won't be easy." Aurelia's face set in a determined expression that was startlingly familiar. "I want to help. I'm not afraid." Cassiel felt a surge of pride, tinged with fear for the dangers that lay ahead. "I know you're not, little one. You're brave, just like your mother. But this will be dangerous. We're stronger together," Aurelia said firmly, echoing words Cassiel had said to her earlier. "Isn't that what you told me?" A chuckle escaped Cassiel's lips. "Using my own words against me already? You really are your mother's daughter." The moment of levity was short-lived. Helena's device beeped urgently, drawing their attention. "We've got movement," she said, her voice tense. "Multiple vehicles approaching from the south. We need to move." A flurry of activity followed as they gathered what little supplies they had. Cassiel carefully tucked Evadne's notebook into his jacket, along with the photograph he'd found. As he helped Aurelia into a too large jacket they'd found in the cabin, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing towards a confrontation that had been years in the making. They slipped out of the cabin just as the first hints of dust clouds appeared on the horizon. The dense woods provided cover, but also slowed their progress. Cassiel kept a firm grip on Aurelia's hand, helping her over fallen logs and through tangled underbrush. As they moved, Estefania fell into step beside Cassiel. "There's something you should know," she said, her voice low. "About Victor, and why he's so obsessed with finding Aurelia." Cassiel glanced at her, noting the worry etched deep in the old woman's face. "What is it?" Estefania took a deep breath. "Victor believes that Aurelia is the key to unlocking a power he's been seeking for years. A power that, in the wrong hands, could reshape the world." "What kind of power?" Cassiel asked, his grip on Aurelia's hand tightening instinctively. "It's called the Crimson Protocol," Estefania explained. "A set of algorithms and codes that, when fully implemented, could give someone control over global financial systems, communications networks, even military defenses." Cassiel's mind reeled. "And Victor thinks Aurelia is the key to this protocol?" Estefania nodded grimly. Evadne was the one who discovered it, who realized its potential for both good and evil. She hid the most crucial parts of it, encoding them in a way that only someone with her unique genetic markers could unlock. "Aurelia?" Cassiel breathed, the full weight of the situation crashing down on him. "Yes," Estefania confirmed. "Victor believes that with Aurelia's DNA, he can complete the Crimson Protocol and gain unimaginable power." As they pushed on through the forest, Cassiel's mind raced. The stakes were higher than he could have ever imagined. It wasn't just about protecting Aurelia anymore. It was about safeguarding the entire world from a madman's ambitions. The distant sound of engines grew louder, spurring them to move faster. As they crested a hill, the sprawling cityscape of Millionaire came into view. The old clock tower stood tall in the center, a beacon of hope and danger. Cassiel knelt down, bringing himself eye level with Aurelia. "Listen to me," he said softly but firmly. "What we're about to do is very dangerous. If at any point you feel scared or unsure, you tell me. Promise?" Aurelia nodded solemnly. "I promise, Papa." The word Papa still sent a jolt through Cassiel's heart. He pulled her into a tight hug, breathing in the scent of her hair, committing this moment to memory. As they broke apart, Helena's voice cut through the moment. "We need to keep moving. I've got a contact in the city who might be able to help us get to the clock tower undetected." They began their descent towards Millionaire, each step bringing them closer to answers, to danger, and to a confrontation that would determine not just their fate, but potentially the fate of the world. The old clock tower loomed in the distance, its hands frozen in time, waiting to reveal secrets long hidden. As they moved through the outskirts of the city, blending in with the early morning crowds, Cassiel couldn't shake the feeling that Evadne was with them, guiding them towards a truth that had been years in the making. Whatever lay ahead, whatever challenges they would face, Cassiel knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would protect Aurelia with every fiber of his being, for her sake, for Evadne's memory, and for the future of a world teetering on the brink of chaos. The final act of their journey was about to begin, and the stakes could not be higher. The bustling streets of Millionaire were a stark contrast to the quiet woods they had left behind. Cassiel, Aurelia, Helena, and Estefania moved through the morning crowds, trying to blend in, despite their disheveled appearance. The old clock tower loomed above them, both a beacon of hope and a potential trap. Helena led them through a maze of narrow alleys and hidden passages, her knowledge of the city's secrets proving invaluable. "My contact should be meeting us soon," she whispered, eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. As if on cue, a figure emerged from the shadows of a nearby doorway. Cassiel tensed, instinctively pulling Aurelia closer, but Helena's slight nod reassured him. The newcomer was a young woman with vibrant red hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. "Helena," she said softly, her gaze sweeping over the group, "I see you've brought friends." "Mara," Helena replied, relief evident in her voice. "Thank you for coming. We need your help to get to the clock tower undetected." Mara's eyebrows shot up. "The clock tower? That's practically fortress now." "Victor's men have it surrounded." Cassiel stepped forward. "We have to try. Everything depends on it." Mara studied him for a moment, then her eyes fell on Aurelia. Something flickered in her expression. Recognition, perhaps, before she schooled her features into a neutral mask. "All right," she said finally. "I can get you close, but after that you're on your own. Follow me and stay close." As they moved through the city, Mara led them through a dizzying series of turns and hidden passages. Cassiel marveled at the secret world that existed just beneath the surface of the city he thought he knew so well. "How do you know about all these passages?" Aurelia asked, her natural curiosity overcoming her fear. Mara glanced back, a hint of a smile on her lips. "Let's just say I've had a lot of practice staying hidden in this city. Sometimes the best way to fight the darkness is to know it better than it knows itself." Her words sent a chill down Cassiel's spine. He wondered just how deep the influence of the Crimson Veil ran in Lumia. As they neared the clock tower, the streets became noticeably emptier. Cassiel could feel the tension in the air, the sense of being watched. Mara brought them to a halt in a small hidden courtyard. "This is as far as I can take you," she said. "The clock tower is just beyond that wall. There's a maintenance entrance on the east side that might be less guarded." Helena gripped Mara's hand. "Thank you. You've taken a great risk helping us." Mara's eyes darted to Aurelia again. "Just be careful, and whatever you do, don't let them get the girl. The world can't afford for Victor to win." Before Cassiel could ask what she meant, Mara had melted back into the shadows, leaving them alone in the quiet courtyard. "Well," Estefania said, her voice tight with tension, "I suppose this is it." Cassiel knelt down in front of Aurelia. "Remember what I said. If you're scared, if anything feels wrong, you tell me, okay?" Aurelia nodded, her blue eyes wide but determined. "I remember, Papa. We're in this together." Cassiel felt a lump form in his throat. He pulled her into a tight hug, wishing he could shield her from the dangers that lay ahead. As they prepared to make their final approach to the clock tower, Helena's device emitted a soft beep. She frowned, tapping at the screen. "That's odd. I'm picking up a signal. It's faint, but it's similar to the encryption Evadne used." "Could it be the final piece of data?" Cassiel asked, hope flaring in his chest. Helena shook her head. "No, this is different. It's like a message, but I can't decode it fully without the key." Estefania peered at the device. "Wait, I recognize some of those symbols. They're from the old cipher Evadne and I used." As Estefania worked to decode the message, Cassiel felt a growing sense of unease. Something about this felt too convenient, too easy. Finally, Estefania's eyes widened. "It's a warning," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It says, 'Beware the wolf in sheep's clothing.'" The heart of the veil beats closer than you think. A chill ran down Cassiel's spine. What does that mean? Before anyone could answer, a commotion erupted from the street beyond their hiding place. The sound of running feet and shouted orders filled the air. "They've found us," Helena hissed. "We need to move now." In the chaos that followed as they scrambled towards the clock tower's maintenance entrance, Cassiel's mind raced. The warning message, the convenient help from Mara, the feeling of being watched, it all pointed to a troubling conclusion. There was a traitor in their midst. Someone close to them was working for Victor Salvatore. As they slipped through the maintenance door and into the shadowy interior of the clock tower, Cassiel knew that the final confrontation was at hand. But now, with doubt and suspicion clouding his mind, he wasn't sure who he could trust. The clock tower's ancient mechanisms ticked above them, counting down to a moment of truth that would change everything. Cassiel gripped Aurelia's hand tightly, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead. The answers they sought were close, but so were their enemies. And as they climbed the winding stairs towards the clock tower's heart, Cassiel couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The final piece of Evadne's puzzle awaited them, but so did revelations that would shake their world to its core. The true test of their strength, their love, and their trust was about to begin. In the shadows of the clock tower, with danger closing in from all sides, Cassiel made a silent vow. No matter what happened, no matter what truths were revealed, he would protect Aurelia, even if it cost him everything. The gears of fate were turning and the moment of reckoning was at hand. The interior of the clock tower was a labyrinth of shadows and ticking mechanisms. Cassiel led the way, one hand firmly grasping Aurelia's, the other holding a small flashlight that barely penetrated the gloom. Helena and Estefania followed close behind, their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. As they climbed the winding stairs, the enormity of the clock tower's inner workings became apparent. Massive gears turned slowly overhead, their steady rhythm a counterpoint to the rapid beating of their hearts. "Where exactly are we looking?" Estefania whispered, her eyes darting nervously around the cavernous space. Cassiel's mind raced back to the day he had proposed to Evadne in this very tower. "The observation deck," he said softly. "It's where we shared our most precious moments. If Evadne hid something here, that's where it would be." They continued their ascent, the air growing thinner and the ticking of the clock growing louder. Aurelia stumbled slightly, and Cassiel scooped her up into his arms without breaking stride. "You okay, little one?" he murmured. Aurelia nodded against his shoulder. "Just tired and scared. But I'm trying to be brave like Mama." Cassiel's heart clenched. "You are brave, Aurelia, so incredibly brave." As they neared the top of the tower, Helena's device began to emit a soft, pulsing beep. "We're close," she whispered urgently. The signal's getting stronger. They emerged onto the observation deck, a circular platform encased in glass that offered a panoramic view of Lumiar. In daylight, it would have been breathtaking. Now, in the pre-dawn gloom, it felt exposed and vulnerable. "Spread out," Cassiel instructed, setting Aurelia down gently. "Look for anything out of place, anything that might be a hiding spot." They began to search, running their hands along the walls, checking behind old informational plaques, looking for any sign of Evadne's presence. It was Aurelia who found it. "Papa," she called out softly. "Look at this." Cassiel hurried to her side. She was pointing at a small brass plaque near the railing. It looked unremarkable at first glance, but as Cassiel leaned in closer, he saw it. Tiny engravings around the edge, almost invisible to the naked eye. "The cipher," Estefania breathed, peering over his shoulder. "It's the same one from Evadne's notes." With trembling fingers, Cassiel traced the engravings. As he did, he felt a small click, and the plaque swung open like a tiny door, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a small, ornate key and a folded piece of paper. Cassiel retrieved them both, his heart pounding. "What does it say?" Helena asked, her voice tight with anticipation. Cassiel unfolded the paper, recognizing Evadne's handwriting immediately. "My loves, if you're reading this, then you've come so far and overcome so much. I'm sorry for all the pain and danger I've put you through, but it was necessary to protect you and the world from what Victor seeks. The key you found will unlock a safe deposit box at the Lumiar Central Bank. Inside is the final piece of the Crimson Protocol, along with evidence of Victor's crimes, but be warned. Accessing it will alert Victor's systems. You'll need to move quickly. Cassiel, my darling, I know you must have questions, must feel betrayed by all I've kept from you. Know that every secret, every lie was to protect you and our daughter. I hope that one day you can forgive me. Aurelia, my sweet girl, I'm so sorry I couldn't be there to watch you grow, but know that I love you more than life itself, and that you are stronger than you know. Trust in each other, and in the love that binds you. It's the one thing Victor can never understand or defeat. All my love, Evadne." As Cassiel finished reading, he felt tears pricking at his eyes. He looked up to see Aurelia watching him, her own eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "She loved us," Aurelia said softly. "She really loved us." Cassiel pulled her into a tight embrace. "Yes, she did, and we're going to finish what she started." The moment was shattered by the sound of a helicopter approaching. Helena rushed to the window, her face pale. "It's Victor's men." "They've found us." Estefania's voice was urgent. "We need to get to that bank before they realize what we've found." Cassiel nodded, tucking the key and letter safely away. "All right, let's move. Stay close and—" His words were cut off by the sound of the door to the observation deck bursting open. A group of armed men flooded in, led by a tall, imposing figure with cold, calculating eyes. "Well, well," the man said, his voice smooth and cultured. "Cassiel d'Alembert, we meet at last." Cassiel pushed Aurelia behind him, facing the newcomer with steely determination. "Victor Salvatore, I presume?" Victor's smile was predatory. "Indeed. I must say you've led us on quite a chase, but it ends here." His gaze shifted to Aurelia, and his eyes gleamed with an unsettling intensity. "Hello, little one. You look so much like your mother." Aurelia clung to Cassiel's leg, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "You're the bad man, the one Mama was afraid of." Victor's laugh was cold and mirthless. "Afraid? My dear, your mother was many things, but afraid was not one of them. No, Evadne was misguided. She didn't understand the true potential of what we had created." Cassiel's mind raced, looking for a way out, a way to protect Aurelia. But they were surrounded, outnumbered, with nowhere to run. It was then that Helena stepped forward, her device held out in front of her like a shield. "I wouldn't be so sure of your victory, Victor," she said, her voice surprisingly calm. "You see, we've already transmitted the location of the final piece to our allies. Even if you stop us here, you've lost." Victor's eyes narrowed, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. "You're bluffing, are we?" Estefania chimed in, catching on to Helena's ploy. "Can you afford to take that chance?" For a moment, tension crackled in the air like electricity. Then, Victor's composure cracked. "Find that transmission," he barked at his men. "Tear this tower apart if you have to." In the chaos that followed, as Victor's men scrambled to search for a non-existent transmission, Cassiel saw their chance. He scooped Aurelia into his arms and made a dash for the stairs, Helena and Estefania close behind. They plunged back into the shadowy interior of the clock tower, the sounds of pursuit echoing off the walls. As they raced down the winding stairs, weaving between massive gears and ticking mechanisms, Cassiel's mind whirled. They had the key to the final piece of the puzzle, but Victor was hot on their heels. The bank was across town and they were running out of time and options. As they burst out of the clock tower's maintenance entrance and into the early morning light, Cassiel knew that the final act of their journey was about to unfold. The race to the bank, the confrontation with Victor, the truth behind the Crimson Protocol. It would all come to a head in the next few crucial hours. With Aurelia in his arms and determination in his heart, Cassiel ran towards an uncertain future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For Evadne, for Aurelia, for the world that hung in the balance. The gears of destiny were turning, and the final pieces of the puzzle were about to fall into place. The streets of Lumia were beginning to stir with early morning activity, as Cassiel, Aurelia, Helena, and Estefania raced through the waking city. Their breath came in ragged gasps, their feet pounding against the cobblestones as they put as much distance as possible between themselves and the clock tower. "We need transportation," Cassiel panted, still carrying Aurelia. "We'll never make it to the bank on foot." Helena nodded, her eyes scanning the street. Suddenly, she veered off towards a parked motorcycle. "Cover me," she said, pulling out a small toolkit from her jacket. Cassiel wanted to protest. Stealing wasn't exactly setting a good example for Aurelia, but they were out of options. He set Aurelia down, keeping her close as he and Estefania formed a protective barrier around Helena. Within moments, the motorcycle roared to life. "I can take two," Helena said, swinging her leg over the seat. "Go," Estefania urged. "Take Cassiel and Aurelia. I'll find another way." Cassiel hesitated. "We can't split up, it's too dangerous." Estefania's eyes were fierce with determination. "We don't have a choice. Victor's men will be swarming the streets any minute. Go, I'll meet you at the bank." With a heavy heart, Cassiel climbed onto the motorcycle behind Helena, pulling Aurelia in front of him. As they sped away, he caught a last glimpse of Estefania disappearing down an alleyway. The wind whipped past them as Helena navigated the increasingly busy streets with skill. Aurelia clung to Cassiel, her small body tense with fear and excitement. "You okay?" Cassiel shouted over the engine's roar. Aurelia nodded, a determined set to her jaw that reminded him so much of Evadne. "We're going to win, right, Papa?" Cassiel tightened his arms around her. "We're sure going to try, little one." As they neared the financial district, the streets became more crowded. Helena weaved through traffic, ignoring angry honks and shouts. In the distance, Cassiel could see the imposing facade of the Lumia Central Bank. Suddenly, a black SUV swerved into their path. Helena cursed, veering sharply to avoid collision. They skidded to a stop in front of a busy cafe, startled patrons scattering. "Run!" Helena shouted, abandoning the motorcycle. They sprinted down the sidewalk, dodging pedestrians and street vendors. Cassiel's legs burned with exertion, but the adrenaline coursing through his veins kept him moving. As they rounded a corner, Cassiel saw the bank's entrance just a block away. But between them and their goal was a line of Victor's men, their dark suits and earpieces marking them clearly as a threat. "This way," Helena hissed, pulling them into a narrow alley. "There's a service entrance on the other side of the building." They navigated through a maze of back alleys, the sounds of pursuit growing closer. Just as they reached the service door, a figure stepped out from the shadows. Cassiel pushed Aurelia behind him, ready to fight, but then he recognized the newcomer. "Estefania," the old woman smiled grimly. "Told you I'd meet you here." Before they could exchange more words, the door burst open. A security guard stumbled out, looking confused and alarmed. Helena stepped forward, her voice urgent. "Listen carefully. We need to access a safety deposit box immediately. It's a matter of national security." The guard's eyes widened. "I can't just—" "Please," Cassiel interjected, desperation clear in his voice. "Lives are at stake, including my daughter's." Something in Cassiel's tone must have convinced the guard. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Follow me, quickly." They rushed through the bank's back corridors, the guard leading them to a secure elevator. As the doors closed behind them, Cassiel felt a momentary sense of relief, but he knew they weren't safe yet. The vault level was eerily quiet. Row upon row of safety deposit boxes lined the walls, each holding secrets and treasures unknown. "Box number?" the guard asked. Cassiel pulled out Evadne's note, his hands shaking slightly. 7139. As the guard led them to the correct box, Cassiel could hear commotion from above. Victor's men had entered the bank. "Hurry!" Helena urged. With trembling fingers, Cassiel inserted the key. The lock clicked open, revealing a small USB drive and a sealed envelope. Just as he retrieved the items, alarms began to blare. The vault door started to close automatically. "Run!" Estefania shouted. They sprinted for the exit, the heavy vault door inching shut with each passing second. Cassiel scooped up Aurelia, pushing her through the narrowing gap. He dove through after her, feeling the rush of air as the door sealed behind him. But their relief was short-lived. As they turned towards the elevator, they found themselves face to face with Victor Salvatore and a group of armed men. Victor's smile was cold and triumphant. "Well done, Mr. D'Alembert. You've saved me the trouble of opening that vault myself." Cassiel pushed Aurelia behind him, his mind racing for a way out. But they were cornered, outnumbered, with nowhere to run. Victor held out his hand. "The drive and the envelope, if you please. There's no need for anyone to get hurt." Cassiel's grip tightened on the items. Everything they had fought for, everything Evadne had sacrificed, it all came down to this moment. But before he could respond, a commotion erupted from the stairwell. Shouts and the sound of gunfire echoed through the vault antechamber. Victor's head snapped towards the noise, his composure cracking for the first time. "What the—" In that moment of distraction, Helena made her move. With lightning speed, she disarmed the nearest guard, using him as a human shield as she opened fire on Victor's men. "Go!" she shouted to Cassiel. "Get Aurelia out of here!" Chaos erupted in the confined space. Cassiel didn't hesitate. He scooped Aurelia into his arms and ran, Estefania close behind. As they burst into the bank's main lobby, they found it in turmoil. Men and women in tactical gear were engaged in firefights with Victor's forces. Cassiel recognized some of them. They were the allies Evadne had mentioned, finally making their move. "This way," a voice called out. Cassiel turned to see Mara, the red-headed woman who had helped them earlier, waving them towards an exit. With no time to question her reappearance, Cassiel followed. They ducked and weaved through the battle, the sounds of gunfire and shattering glass all around them. As they emerged into the sunlight, a van screeched to a halt in front of them. The side door slid open, revealing a team of operatives. "Get in," Mara shouted. "We'll explain everything once you're safe." Cassiel hesitated for a split second, his instincts warring with the need to protect Aurelia. But one look at his daughter's frightened face made the decision for him. They climbed into the van, which sped away as soon as the doors closed. As they raced through the streets of Lumiar, leaving the chaos of the bank behind, Cassiel held Aurelia close. "It's okay," he murmured, though his own heart was racing. "We're safe now." But even as he said the words, Cassiel knew that their ordeal was far from over. The USB drive felt heavy in his pocket, a reminder of the secrets and dangers they had yet to face. The van sped through the outskirts of Lumiar, leaving the chaos of the city behind. Cassiel held Aurelia close, his mind racing with questions. Mara sat across from them, her piercing gaze moving between the father and daughter. "Where are we going?" Cassiel finally asked, breaking the tense silence. Mara's expression remained neutral. "Somewhere safe. A place Evadne set up years ago as a final fallback." At the mention of Evadne's name, Aurelia perked up. "You knew my mother?" A flicker of emotion passed over Mara's face. "I did. She was extraordinary." Cassiel felt a pang in his heart. How many people had known Evadne better than he had? How many secrets had she kept? As if reading his thoughts, Mara leaned forward. "I know you must have questions, Mr. D'Alembert, but right now we need to focus on keeping you and Aurelia safe. Victor won't give up easily." The van wound its way up into the hills, eventually turning onto a narrow, unmarked road. After what felt like hours, they came to a stop in front of a nondescript building nestled in the woods. "We're here," Mara announced. "Welcome to the sanctuary." As they exited the van, Cassiel took in their surroundings. The building looked like an ordinary cabin from the outside, but he suspected it was anything but ordinary on the inside. They were led through a series of security checkpoints, each more sophisticated than the last. Finally, they emerged into a large, open room, filled with computer screens and communication equipment. "Impressive," Estefania murmured, her eyes wide as she took in the technology around them. A tall, distinguished-looking man approached them, his salt-and-pepper hair neatly combed back. "Mr. D'Alembert, Aurelia, welcome. I'm Director Hawthorne. We've been expecting you." Cassiel's grip on Aurelia tightened instinctively. "You have?" Hawthorne nodded. "Evadne put contingencies in place years ago. We've been monitoring the situation, waiting for the right moment to intervene." "And who exactly are you?" Cassiel asked, unable to keep the edge out of his voice. "We're an independent organization dedicated to keeping the balance of power in check," Hawthorne explained. "Evadne was one of our most valuable assets." Aurelia tugged on Cassiel's sleeve. "Papa, I'm tired," she whispered. Hawthorne's expression softened. "Of course, you both must be exhausted. We've prepared rooms for you. We can discuss everything in detail after you've rested." As much as Cassiel wanted answers, he couldn't deny his own fatigue. He nodded, allowing themselves to be led to a comfortable suite. Once alone, Cassiel helped Aurelia get settled. As he tucked her into bed, she looked up at him with those eyes so like Evadne's. "Papa, are we really safe now?" Cassiel's heart clenched. "I hope so, little one. I promise I'll do everything I can to protect you." As Aurelia drifted off to sleep, Cassiel sat in a chair by the window, the USB drive and envelope heavy in his pocket. With trembling hands, he opened the envelope first. Inside was a letter, written in Evadne's elegant script. "My dearest Cassiel and Aurelia, if you're reading this, then you've overcome incredible odds and dangers to reach this point. I'm so sorry for all the pain and confusion my secrets have caused. The USB drive contains the final piece of the Crimson Protocol, as well as evidence of Victor's crimes. But it also holds something far more precious. The truth about our family, and about Aurelia's unique gift. Cassiel, what I couldn't tell you before is that Aurelia isn't just our daughter. She's the key to unlocking a power that could change the world. The Crimson Protocol isn't just a set of algorithms. It's a gateway to something beyond our current understanding of science and technology. Aurelia has a rare genetic marker, one that allows her to interface with the protocol in ways no one else can. It's why Victor has been so desperate to find her. In the wrong hands, this power could be catastrophic, but in the right hands, in our daughter's hands, it could be the key to solving some of humanity's greatest challenges. I know this is a lot to take in, and I'm sorry I can't be there to explain it all in person. Trust in Director Hawthorne and his team. They've been preparing for this moment for years. Most importantly, trust in each other. The love between a parent and child is the most powerful force in the world. It's what will guide Aurelia as she learns to harness her gift. I love you both more than words can express. Stay strong, stay together, and know that I'm always with you in spirit. All my love, Evadne." Cassiel lowered the letter, his mind reeling. He looked at Aurelia's sleeping form, seeing her in a new light. Not just his daughter, not just Evadne's legacy, but potentially the key to humanity's future. The weight of this knowledge settled on his shoulders like a physical burden. How could he protect her from those who would exploit her gift? How could he prepare her for the challenges that lay ahead? As the first light of dawn crept through the window, Cassiel made a silent vow. No matter what came next, no matter what revelations the USB drive held, he would stand by Aurelia's side. He would be the father she needed, the protector Evadne had trusted him to be. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and impossible choices. But as he watched his daughter sleep, Cassiel felt a glimmer of hope. Together, they would face whatever the future held. Together, they would unlock the secrets of the Crimson Protocol and forge a new destiny. The final act of their journey was about to begin, and the fate of the world hung in the balance. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the room. Cassiel had barely slept, his mind churning with the revelations from Evadne's letter. As Aurelia began to stir, he quickly tucked the letter away, forcing a smile onto his face. "Good morning, little one," he said softly. "How did you sleep?" Aurelia rubbed her eyes, looking around the unfamiliar room. "Where are we, Papa?" "Somewhere safe," Cassiel assured her, though doubt gnawed at the edges of his mind. Could anywhere truly be safe with the weight of Evadne's secrets hanging over them? A gentle knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Director Hawthorne entered, his face grave. "Mr. D'Alembert, Aurelia, I hope you rested well. We have much to discuss." They were led to a secure conference room where Mara, Estefania, and several other serious-looking individuals were already gathered. At the center of the table was a computer, its screen dark and waiting. "The USB drive, if you please," Hawthorne said, holding out his hand. Cassiel hesitated, his hand instinctively moving to his pocket. "How do I know I can trust you?" Hawthorne's expression softened. "I understand your caution, Mr. D'Alembert, but Evadne trusted us, and right now, we're your best hope of keeping Aurelia safe and stopping Victor Salvatore." After a moment's deliberation, Cassiel handed over the drive. As Hawthorne inserted it into the computer, the screen came to life, filling with complex diagrams, lines of code, and what looked like genetic sequences. "The Crimson Protocol," Mara breathed, leaning in for a closer look. Aurelia's eyes were wide as she stared at the screen. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Cassiel felt a chill run down his spine. Could Aurelia already be connecting with the protocol somehow? Hawthorne began to explain, his voice grave. "The Crimson Protocol is more than just a set of algorithms. It's a bridge between human consciousness and advanced technology. In the right hands, it could revolutionize everything from medicine to environmental restoration. In the wrong hands, it could enslave humanity," Estefania finished, her face pale. Cassiel pulled Aurelia closer to him. "And you're saying my daughter is the key to all this?" Hawthorne nodded. "Aurelia possesses a unique genetic marker that allows her to interface with the protocol in ways no one else can. It's why Victor has been so desperate to find her." Aurelia looked up at Cassiel, fear and confusion in her eyes. "Papa, I don't understand. What does this mean?" Cassiel knelt down to her level, taking her small hands in his. "It means you're very special, little one, and that we have a big responsibility to use your gift wisely." As if on cue, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Mara rushed to a nearby console, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "We've got incoming, multiple vehicles approaching fast." Hawthorne's face hardened. "It's Victor. He must have tracked us somehow." He turned to Cassiel and Aurelia. "We need to move you to a secure location, now." As they hurried through the corridors, the sound of gunfire erupted outside. Cassiel scooped Aurelia into his arms, his heart pounding. They reached a reinforced door, beyond which lay a small room with what looked like a modified sensory deprivation tank. "What is this?" Cassiel demanded. "It's an interface chamber," Hawthorne explained quickly, "designed to amplify Aurelia's connection to the protocol. It might be our only chance to stay ahead of Victor." Cassiel's mind reeled. "You want to put my daughter in that thing? She's just a child." Aurelia tugged on his sleeve. "Papa, I think I need to do this. I can feel it calling to me." The sounds of battle grew closer. They were running out of time. With a heavy heart, Cassiel nodded. He helped Aurelia into the chamber, fighting back tears. "I'll be right here," he promised. "I won't let anything happen to you." As the chamber sealed shut, the room plunged into darkness. Then, suddenly, holographic displays sprang to life all around them, filling the air with swirling patterns of light and data. Through a small window, Cassiel could see Aurelia floating in the chamber, her eyes closed in concentration. The patterns of light seemed to flow through her, as if she were becoming one with the protocol itself. Incredible, Hawthorne murmured. She's accessing levels of the protocol we've never been able to reach before. Suddenly, Aurelia's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. Her voice, when she spoke, seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I can see it all," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "The connections, the patterns, I understand now." Before anyone could respond, the door burst open. Victor Salvatore stood in the doorway, flanked by armed men, his face a mask of triumph and madness. "At last," he breathed, his eyes fixed on Aurelia in the chamber. "The key to everything." Cassiel moved to stand between Victor and his daughter, ready to fight to his last breath. But Aurelia's voice rang out once more, calm and filled with a wisdom beyond her years. "It's over, Victor," she said. "I've seen the truth of the protocol. It was never meant for one person to control. Its power belongs to all of humanity." As she spoke, the holographic displays began to shift and change. Data flowed out from the chamber, spreading through the facility's systems and beyond. Victor's face contorted with rage. "No! You can't do this. The power is mine." But it was too late. Alarms began to sound on the devices carried by Victor's men. Reports flooded in of systems failing, secrets being exposed worldwide. In that moment of chaos, Cassiel saw his chance. He lunged at Victor, tackling him to the ground. As they struggled, Cassiel caught a glimpse of Aurelia through the chamber window. She smiled at him, a smile full of love and reassurance. "It's okay, Papa," her voice echoed in his mind. "I know what to do now." A blinding light filled the room, emanating from the chamber. When it faded, the holographic displays were gone, and the chamber door slowly opened. Aurelia stepped out looking somehow both exactly the same and profoundly changed. She walked past the stunned onlookers, past the subdued Victor, and straight into Cassiel's arms. "I did it, Papa," she whispered. "I set it free. The protocol belongs to everyone now." As Cassiel held his daughter close, he realized that this was both an end and a beginning. The danger from Victor was over, but the true journey of understanding Aurelia's gift, of helping her navigate this new world she had unlocked, was just beginning. Outside, the sounds of battle had ceased. A new day was dawning, not just for them, but for the entire world. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Cassiel knew one thing for certain. He and Aurelia would face them together, bound by a love stronger than any protocol, any danger, any force on Earth. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape. And with Aurelia's gift and Cassiel's unwavering support, it promised to be a future filled with hope, wonder, and infinite possibilities. The days following the confrontation at the sanctuary passed in a blur of debriefings, medical checkups, and hushed conversations. Cassiel hardly left Aurelia's side, watching over her as she slept and holding her hand through endless meetings with Director Hawthorne and his team. As the world grappled with the sudden influx of information released by the Crimson Protocol, Cassiel and Aurelia found themselves at the center of a storm they barely understood. News reports spoke of massive data leaks, corrupt officials being exposed, and groundbreaking scientific discoveries being shared freely across the globe. "It's remarkable," Estefania mused one evening as they sat in the comfortable living quarters provided by Hawthorne's organization. "Evadne always said the protocol could change the world, but I never imagined it would be like this." Cassiel nodded, his eyes never leaving Aurelia, who was curled up on a nearby couch, leafing through a book on quantum physics that would have been incomprehensible to her just days ago. "I just hope we did the right thing," he said softly, releasing all that information at once. "There's bound to be chaos." As if on cue, Mara entered the room, her face grave. "We've got a situation," she announced. "There's a crowd gathering outside the compound. Journalists, government officials, even some protesters. They're demanding to see Aurelia." Cassiel tensed, ready to fight. "Absolutely not. She's been through enough." Aurelia looked up from her book, her eyes wise beyond her years. "It's okay, Papa. I think I need to talk to them." "Sweetheart, you don't owe them anything," Cassiel began, but Aurelia cut him off with a gentle smile. "I know, Papa, but the protocol showed me so much. About the world, about people. I understand things now that I didn't before. And I think I can help them understand too. Cassiel felt a mixture of pride and fear wash over him. His little girl, so brave, so wise, but still so young, still so vulnerable. After much discussion and preparation, it was decided that Aurelia would address the crowd, but from a secure location within the compound. Cassiel stood beside her as she faced the cameras, his hand on her shoulder, a silent pillar of support. Aurelia's voice was clear and steady as she spoke. I know you all have many questions about the Crimson Protocol, about what's happening to our world. The truth is, I'm still figuring it out myself. But what I do know is this. The knowledge contained in the protocol doesn't belong to any one person or group. It belongs to all of us. She went on to explain, in terms that somehow made the complex concepts accessible, how the protocol was already being used to tackle climate change, cure diseases, and bridge cultural divides. But with great knowledge comes great responsibility, she cautioned. It's up to all of us to use this gift wisely, to build a better world for everyone. As Aurelia spoke, Cassiel noticed something extraordinary. The crowd, which had been restless and demanding, fell into a hushed silence. Even the most skeptical journalists seemed captivated by her words. When she finished, there was a moment of profound silence, followed by a thunderous applause. Cassiel pulled Aurelia into a tight hug, his heart swelling with pride and love. Later that night, as he tucked Aurelia into bed, she looked up at him with those eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the universe. Papa, she said softly, do you think Mama would be proud of us? Cassiel felt tears prick at his eyes. Oh, sweetheart, he murmured, stroking her hair. I know she would be. She is. Wherever she is, I'm sure she's watching over us, beaming with pride. As Aurelia drifted off to sleep, Cassiel stood by the window, looking out at the starry sky. The world was changing, faster than anyone could have predicted, and his daughter, his brilliant, brave, beautiful daughter, was at the heart of it all. He thought of Evadne, of all the sacrifices she had made to bring them to this point. We did it, my love, he whispered to the stars. We protected her, just like you wanted, and now she's going to change the world. As he turned back to look at Aurelia's sleeping form, Cassiel felt a sense of peace wash over him. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever new wonders or dangers the Crimson Protocol might bring, they would face them together. Father and daughter, bound by love, guided by the legacy of a remarkable woman who had seen the future and dared to shape it. The dawn of a new era was breaking, and Cassiel d'Alembert, once a man lost in the shadows of his past, now stood ready to step into the light, hand in hand, with the miraculous daughter he never knew he had. The adventure that had begun with a mysterious blue dahlia was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. 1 year had passed since the day Aurelia unveiled the Crimson Protocol to the world. The old clock tower in Lumiere, once a silent guardian of secrets, now stood as a symbol of the new age that had dawned. Its face had been replaced with a holographic display, constantly updating with new discoveries and breakthroughs made possible by the protocol. Cassiel stood at the base of the tower, hand in hand with Aurelia, marveling at how much had changed and how much had stayed the same. His daughter, now 11, still had the same curious gleam in her eye, the same determined set to her jaw. But there was a new confidence in her stance, a wisdom in her gaze that spoke of the incredible journey they had undergone. Ready for the ceremony? He asked, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. Aurelia nodded, a mix of excitement and nervousness playing across her face. I think so. Do you think there will be many people? Cassiel chuckled. Sweetheart, I think half the world would show up if they could. But don't worry, Hawthorne's team has everything under control. As if on cue, Mara appeared, looking smart in a crisp suit. It's time, she said, her usual serious expression softened by a small smile. They're waiting for you both. They made their way to the newly constructed plaza in front of the clock tower. A sea of faces greeted them, dignitaries from around the world, scientists, journalists, and ordinary citizens, all gathered to commemorate the 1-year anniversary of the protocol's release. Director Hawthorne stood at the podium, his face beaming with pride as he introduced Cassiel and Aurelia. Ladies and gentlemen, the guardians of the Crimson Protocol, the d'Alemberts. As they took the stage, a holographic image of Evadne appeared beside them, smiling that enigmatic smile that Cassiel had fallen in love with so many years ago. It was a recording she had left behind, meant to be played on this very day. "My darlings," Evadne's voice rang out, clear and strong. "If you're seeing this, then the dream we fought so hard for has become a reality. The Crimson Protocol is not just a collection of data or algorithms. It's a bridge to a future where knowledge is free, where the boundaries between nations and cultures fade away, and where humanity can reach its full potential." Cassiel felt tears prick at his eyes as he listened to his late wife's words. Aurelia squeezed his hand, her own eyes shimmering with emotion. "Aurelia, my sweet girl," Evadne continued, "you have a great gift, and with it comes great responsibility. But I know you have the strength and wisdom to guide humanity towards a brighter future. And Cassiel, my love, your unwavering support and love will be the foundation upon which Aurelia can build that future." As Evadne's image faded, Aurelia stepped up to the microphone. The crowd fell silent, hanging on her every word. "A year ago, I stood before you, trying to explain something I barely understood myself," she began. "Today, I stand here in awe of what we've accomplished together. The Crimson Protocol has allowed us to make incredible strides in medicine, in clean energy, in space exploration, but more importantly, it has brought us closer together as a global community." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. "But our work is far from over. The protocol has shown us infinite horizons, possibilities beyond our wildest dreams. It's up to us to explore those horizons responsibly, ethically, and with compassion for all living beings." As Aurelia spoke, Cassiel couldn't help but marvel at the poise and wisdom she displayed. She was no longer just his little girl. She was a beacon of hope for the entire world. The ceremony concluded with the unveiling of a new initiative, the Evadne Foundation for Global Harmony. Its mission was to ensure that the benefits of the Crimson Protocol reached every corner of the globe, leaving no one behind in this new era of enlightenment. As the crowds dispersed and the sun began to set, Cassiel and Aurelia found a quiet moment alone. They stood in the shadow of the clock tower, watching as its holographic face cycled through images of the incredible advancements made in the past year. "Papa," Aurelia said softly, "do you ever wish we could go back to before all of this happened?" Cassiel considered the question carefully. "There are moments when I miss the simplicity of our old life," he admitted. "But then I think of all the good we've done, all the lives we've touched, and I wouldn't change a thing." Aurelia leaned against him, a contented sigh escaping her lips. "Me neither. I hope I can live up to everyone's expectations, to Mama's legacy." Cassiel wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Sweetheart, you've already exceeded any expectation anyone could have had. Your mother would be so proud of you, I know I am." As the first stars began to appear in the twilight sky, Cassiel felt a sense of peace wash over him. The road ahead was still long and undoubtedly filled with challenges. The Crimson Protocol, for all its benefits, had also opened up new ethical dilemmas and potential dangers that they would need to navigate carefully. But looking at Aurelia, seeing the determination in her eyes and the compassion in her heart, Cassiel knew that the future was in good hands. Together, they would continue to explore the infinite horizons that lay before them, guided by Evadne's enduring love and the unbreakable bond between father and daughter. As they turned to leave, Cassiel caught a glimpse of something that made him pause. There, growing in a small garden bed at the base of the clock tower, was a single blue dahlia. Its petals seemed to glow in the fading light, a silent reminder of where their journey had begun. Aurelia noticed it too, a smile spreading across her face. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Yes," Cassiel agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "Just like your mother. Just like you." Hand in hand, they walked away from the clock tower, ready to face whatever the future might hold. The blue dahlia swayed gently in the evening breeze, a symbol of hope, of love, and of the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. The story of the Crimson Protocol, of Evadne's sacrifice, of Cassiel's unwavering love, and of Aurelia's remarkable gift would be told for generations to come. But for Cassiel and Aurelia, it wasn't just a story. It was their life, their legacy, and their ongoing journey into a future bright with promise and endless wonder. As they disappeared into the twilight, the clock tower continued its silent vigil, its holographic face a constant reminder of how far they had come and how far they still had to go. The adventure that had begun with a mysterious blue dahlia had blossomed into something far greater than anyone could have imagined. A new chapter in human history, written with the ink of knowledge and illuminated by the light of love.